At the hour of two family gatherings, the head of the family just announced a competition. He declared a contest for the selection of the next arrow. All attention was focused on who would manage to become the best. All his sons were to compete, and most importantly, to choose exactly the one who would be worthy. Shu is the least favored among all. He is the only illegitimate child born from a servant mistress. And throughout his life, he was despised and ignored. Eventually, he became famous as nothing Tresh. Tresh is the second youngest lord of this family. So it is quite natural that he is looked at with disapproving glances. And he becomes the object of condemnation, as if he were the culprit. But despite this, our hero astonishes everyone. He voices his intentions without any hints. He strives to take the position of head of the family. Because of this, one servant dares to interrupt him. But in the end, our hero delivers such kicks to the servant that it takes one's breath away. He drives him away mercilessly and leaves everyone who sees this in shocked silence, leaving everyone who observes in shock. And at this moment, it becomes clear. Our hero has been reborn in this world. That is why such things happen, as if reality has come undone from its fastenings, because he is the son of the Chu family. He will stand to the death not only for the position of head of the family, he will also take revenge and kill anyone who dares to stand in his way. To understand how it all happened, let us return to that moment and to the day when our protagonist died. Obviously, the antagonist of our protagonist is Lin Ye, one of those wealthy young Chinese masters from the most prestigious and powerful Ye family. His family are business magnates, and among Lin Ye's brothers and sisters, he turns out to be an illegitimate son. So of course, while his older brothers are busy managing the family business and trying to win the position of chief executive officer, our main hero spends his time to the fullest, enjoying life. And all because here, there is no question that an illegitimate son like him could even claim or compete for the CEO position. A moment before death, our main hero suddenly snaps his fingers, and he immediately calls the maid. She brings a gaming helmet. It turns out this is the last pre-release version of the game, and the helmet itself costs about 20 million. The last pre-release edition of the game, and the helmet alone costs approximately 20 million. Not to mention that the game itself, according to rumors, was made even more difficult than Elden Ring. Of course, Linear's friends, also illegitimate sons from other powerful families, cannot help but shudder and openly admit that they are envious. So it's no surprise our hero, despite everything, still longs to see what exactly this version of the game has prepared. He wants to see what it is capable of and what trick it hides behind each of its moves. He puts the helmet on his head. Lin Yi immediately hears a message from one of the brothers. He calls him a hidden threat and hopes that in another life, he will be lucky enough to truly have fun. But his friends still understand nothing and remain in complete ignorance. Not only do they not figure out what is happening, they do not even guess what will happen next. However, in a moment, the head of our protagonist suddenly explodes. This is how Lin Yi ends up in this world. They cannot believe that his brothers were capable of killing him, since he never once competed for power. Because of this, he begins to rethink his own life and regrets that he never fought for authority. But at that very moment, memories from the host begin to surface, predictably, like in a textbook. The worst part is that he is also the illegitimate son of a concubine. Because of his status, he has been treated poorly and ignored in the family ever since, from the day his mother died during childbirth. Shu is weak, and during the struggle for the position of head of the family, he sides with the eldest brother among the three brothers. Because of this, his third brother goes mad and frames Shu for exile. Shu is sent to the mines. At first, he was supposed to serve there for 3 years, but for some reason, the elders of the Chu clan suddenly decide to choose a new heir. Even Chu Shu, the illegitimate one, is given the privilege to participate. So our protagonist is now heading back to the Chu family mansion. When he reaches for the sword, a question arises in his mind. Why does his new name feel remarkably familiar? He just needs to check his reflection using the sword, and everything immediately falls into place. This made him release the weapon from his hands in shocked surprise. It turned out that he had entered the world of his favorite game, and the body he possessed accidentally turned out to be the final boss in the latest edition, according to the lore. Or later, Chushu will become famous as the greatest villain and demon lord, because of all the trials his own family puts him through. At the end, the game presents him as the demon lord, who rebuilds the once mighty demon sect from 1,000 years ago, commanding 4 of the strongest warriors in the world of martial arts. After considering everything, Linya hesitates whether to laugh or cry. Ultimately, he is destined to become the greatest villain in the game, and as the final boss, it is quite natural that eventually the main protagonist will inevitably defeat him. Linya snorts. Does this mean he is destined to fail again? as in his past life. In his past life, he lived like a sheep and still eventually perished because the heavens gave him a second chance. This time, he will definitely live for himself and crush anyone who stands in his way. At that very moment, his personal maid enters the carriage. She manages to overhear something outside. It seems she wonders, is our protagonist all right? Our protagonist carefully examines her through the memories of the original host. His biological mother of the third brother assigned her to him. The same original Chushu was pathetic. He thought that she was truly assigned to him by the family and that she even cared about him. But throughout all the years of his exile, she not only confronted him with minors to ruin his reputation and incite riots, she did everything she could to kill him. So, understanding this, Lin Ye tells her casually, saying he simply dropped the sword. Chu Yui notices that our protagonist looks different, but still reports the main road is difficult to travel due to rain. Therefore, she suggests taking a shorter path through Yuanbao town. During this, Chushu questions her reasoning because this path is dangerous and full of bandits. Seeing his refusal, she instantly changes tactics and insists that these stories are just rumors. If it were the old Chushu, he would definitely believe it. However, our protagonist is now completely different. Chuyu is shocked by the expression on his face, but our protagonist simply gently squeezes her cheek and, smiling, happily suggests that eventually they pass through the city of Yuanbao. She sighs with relief while Chushu leaves her alone so that she can handle the arrangements. Yua agrees, but she almost bites her tongue, thinking that our protagonist has already noticed something. Eventually, she realizes that she was just overthinking. The wonder is that our protagonist agrees to travel through such a dangerous road. But the truth is simple. Something incredibly important is hidden in that town. Because our protagonist has played through all versions of the game, he knows the lore inside and out. And by his calculations, the main storyline of the first edition hasn't even started yet. Gone yet. And it can only begin in the next 20 years. So right now, Yuanbao has a huge opportunity waiting for it. Town. As soon as they arrive in Yuanbao Tong, Chuyue begins asking about the direction. She notices that this city is by no means close to their homeland, and naturally wonders why they are wandering through this abandoned wilderness. However, Chushu does not respond. He is busy searching for the right angle, precisely that shot. Shop. Not much time passes, and he finally finds the shop of secret boxes. The dragoness recalls from the game lore, 10,000 years ago, a catastrophe occurred, which destroyed many great sects. However, before this catastrophe erupted, the Grandmasters of the Cataclysm formation researched and created special items, so-called secret chests that serve to preserve ancient texts and combat techniques, martial arts techniques. In those times, various sects used different materials and methods to make these secret boxes. Naturally, the more valuable the martial arts technique, the higher the quality had to be in the secret box where it was hidden. After that, after the destruction of those ancient and powerful sects, many people rushed to search for secret chests. What was hidden inside could literally change someone's life. But unfortunately, not every box truly contains something valuable. In the end, it all came down to a game of chance. Even despite this, our protagonist calmly enters the shop, a bit confused as if trying to understand what is what here. Chushu noticed that the stall was strangely empty, so he asked the shopkeeper if things had been bad lately. The latter sighed heavily and explained, Yuanbao is just a remote provincial corner. Those who still come here can hardly afford anything, and obtaining a valuable secret box is even more so. It's almost like winning the lottery. But the shopkeeper confidently replied that Chushu did not look like the poor people of this town at all, and most likely could buy as many boxes as he wanted. Moreover, he recalled that he recently got a whole batch from the ruins of the southern barbarian mountains. Hearing this, Chushu froze in his own thoughts. Although the Chu clan belongs to the highest families with inherited martial arts, he himself was once greatly neglected. Not only was he not properly taught, in cultivation he never received the correct guidance. In short, he is almost powerless. Now Chushu is only at the stage of body tempering, the lowest level that every martial practitioner in the game can reach through harsh physical training. Above this realm exists the realm of blood condensation and the innate realm, and this is the truth. Masters begin to appear. If he is not mistaken, according to the lore from the game, once a servant bought a secret box in this very shop and then used its contents to become a grandmaster and build his own lineage from scratch. Just as he is thinking about this, another customer suddenly enters the shop and, without hesitation, loudly asks the shopkeeper about 2 secret boxes. The shopkeeper immediately recognizes the man. It turns out to be Li Jing. The old man advises Li Jing not to play with luck and not to take random risks, pointing out that the third young master of the Li family likes him and promotes him. If he is smart, he can use this chance and connections to eventually become a leader in the Li household. A leader in the Li household. Mocking the advice, Li Jing insists that no matter what position he obtains, he will still remain just a servant of the Li family. But the secret box can completely change his fate. The shopkeeper can only sigh heavily, hoping that Li Jing really knows what he is doing. Soon he slides 2 random items to Li Jing. At that very moment, our hero sharply steps forward and calmly declares that he has decided to buy the entire store. Our main hero is incredibly confident because Li Jing is actually a servant mentioned in the game's lore. In other words, one of these secret chests definitely contains powerful. Seeing this, Li Jing immediately tries to object, saying that he arrived there first. However, our protagonist casually states that he already said he wants to get everything. If Li Jing has problems with that, let him do something about it. Trying to intimidate, Li Jing proudly claims that he is from the Li family, one of the great prestigious clans of Tongzhou. Shu just shakes his head at the fool and waves him off, saying that Li Jing is a simple servant, but dares to hide behind the name of the Li family for his own benefit. After that, he coldly asks, does this person not know his place at all? And immediately the escorts of our protagonist step forward. Seeing this, Li Jing instantly understands everything and seems to retreat. Meanwhile, our main hero watches him closely and finally understands. With Li Jing's character, whom it is hardly fair to call a coward, it is no wonder that in the game, he only reached a mid-level boss. Although he acquired such powerful equipment, unfortunately for him, this time he will not get this chance. Li Jing can only helplessly watch what is happening. Besides humiliation, he is suddenly overwhelmed by a feeling as if something extremely important has just been stolen from him. So he silently swears to take revenge on our protagonist. Later in this room, our protagonist wastes no time and immediately opens the secret chests. After many futile attempts, he finally stumbles upon luck. Inside one of the chests, there is a treasure. Chushu finds a crystal record. Looking closely, he realized that this is not just an object. Since it contains a Taoist secret manual called Yin-Aid Arts, a cultivation technique of the 4th transformation, it is no wonder that Li Jing initially. Our protagonist explains that in the game, techniques are divided into 9 transformations, and the first 3 are considered the lowest levels, though still valuable enough to serve as hereditary techniques for minor sects. The 4th to 6th transformations are regarded as treasures, powerful enough to establish entire sects. As for the 7th to 9th transformations, these are legendary techniques that can only be found in the strongest sects in the world. But our protagonist admits, above the 9th level, there are still 2 more levels. However, for now, they are useless to him. And yet, this innate mastery is more than enough. It is more than enough to cleanse his body and completely reform the foundation. Simply put, this is a path that challenges the heavens without any age restrictions. With this technique in hand, our protagonist already has a real chance to survive and potentially conquer this world. Family in the future, and now he truly awaits to finally find out what lies ahead. In the rest of the boxes, everything was quiet. Meanwhile, at the other end of the city, Li Jing respectfully greets them. He approaches a big man. This is Li Tong, the leader of the Li family caravan. Casually, he invites Li Jing to join him to have a proper good time. In response, Li Jing impatiently and anxiously explains that he was robbed. Even when he mentioned the Li family name, he was completely ignored. No reaction at all. This immediately piques Li Tong's curiosity, and he demands to know exactly what happened. It happened. After Li Jing waves away the courtesans around him, he begins to tell how everything went. The whole incident. Having listened carefully, Li Tong ponders for a moment. He refuses to allow anyone connected to the Li family, even an ordinary servant, to be mocked so openly. So he orders Li Jing to send someone to find out the identity of the Li family, the offender's identity. Half an hour later, the servant returns and reports the results. The man reports that the culprit turns out to be someone from the Chu family. Hearing this, Li Tong immediately notes that things have become truly troublesome. Among the 3 great clans of Tongzhou, the Shen clan holds first place, the Chu clan second, and the Li clan last. Li Jing can only grit his teeth because even if the 3rd junior master of the Li family arrived personally, there still might be no solution. Feeling puzzled, Li Tong aloud wonders why someone from the prestigious Chu family would dare to wander around such a backwater town. Of course, he properly asks about the identity of this person. But as soon as he learns that it is about Chushu, Li Tong immediately changes his decision and declares that he will deal with this person personally. The matter. Li Jing nervously reminds him that Chushu is still the second junior master of the Chu family. However, Li Tong just laughs and explains that Chushu's reputation is so bad that even a servant is considered more respectable than him. Moreover, everyone knows that he is a coward and a weakling. And although Li Jing appears to be relaxed, inside, after personally meeting our protagonist, he cannot help but feel a drop of that very anxiety. Meanwhile, on the other side, our protagonist is busy with training and cultivation. It turns out he also came across another combat technique from one of the secret chests, this time a blade technique. Knick, known as Sliv Azure Dragon, the second transformational combat technique, which is amazingly simple to master. Suddenly, our hero heard a noise outside. Those who disturbed the peace turned out to be Li Tong and his men. Li Tong. He loudly demands that Chushu come out, return all the secret chests, and apologize to Li Jing. Otherwise, consequences await him. In response, our protagonist calmly descends the stairs and asks what exactly they plan to do if he refuses. Planning what to do if he refuses, one of Li Tong's men immediately brazenly mocks him, ridiculing how pathetic he is, then recklessly hurries to threaten to kill him. They killed Chushu. Our protagonist barely reacts to the provocation. In the very next moment, he instantly unleashes the Blue Dragon Sleeve technique. Only Le Tun and Li Jing remained off stage. Completely stunned, they watched as everything unfolded. The man collapsed helplessly to the ground. Meanwhile, Chushu cold-bloodedly informed them that he absolutely hates being threatened before openly challenging them all. He directly challenged them to attack him. All this time, Chuya did not take her eyes off him, and she could not believe it, that her supposedly useless and unlucky young master had just killed someone. Li Tun mirrored the same expression before a quick anger swiftly overcame him. Our guy is slowly approaching him. In the blink of an eye, our protagonist suddenly finds himself right in front of Li Tun. Raising a knife almost to Li Tun's neck, our protagonist calls him a fool for causing trouble. He reminds Li Tun that even if he receives no privileges from his family, he is still the young master of the Chu family. However, has the fool finally realized how foolish his actions were from the very beginning? Trying to harm our protagonist is the same as slapping the Chu family in the face. To his shock, our protagonist extends the knife to Li Tun and orders him to hold it. When he hesitates, the protagonist looks coldly, making it clear that he will not repeat himself. This makes Li Tun take the knife. However, to everyone's shock, our protagonist orders Li Tun to kill him. Ignoring the group's reaction, our protagonist even decides to help Li Tun. Because of this, Li Tun throws the knife, apologizing, and admits he was wrong. Chusui repeatedly slaps him, pointing out that he already gave Li Tun a chance, but he refused, then orders him to take the subordinate's body and lie low for a while. Chusui watches everything carefully, not believing if this is really the same one. Young master, she knows. As soon as they leave the danger zone, Li Tun immediately bursts into rage. As a result, he vents his anger, slaps the foolish Li Jing for provoking him, and vows to deal with him, even if he enjoys the favor of the third young master. Later that same night, the servant is called. The servant is summoned. The man respectfully bows and asks why our protagonist. Our main hero looks at Gao Bei with a hint of sadness and thinks about how this devoted man was unfair to him. He continues to silently accept everything that befalls our protagonist, not allowing himself to complain. Chushu poked at how exactly Gao Bei endures humiliation. All his peers have already been promoted, but he is still dragging out his service as a miserable guard. He asked if he at least felt a little offended. Gao Bei replied that he was clumsy and foolish, so he was quite satisfied with his current position. Our hero looked at him for a long time and attentively. The expression on his face clearly showed this fool cannot be tricked. He assured Gao Bei not to worry. After all, they are the same. And if so, they will be able to rise together. Gao Bei immediately agreed, but our hero stopped him and said that he did not understand. People of their kind need to take risks if they want to climb higher in life. And so he ordered Gao Bei to go to Mount Shanmen, outside the city of Yanbao, to deliver a message to the bandit leader. Our protagonist also promises to make Gao Bei his personal confidant. Because of this, Gao Bei immediately sinks into deep thought after he realizes the young master is no longer the same as he was before. Then he decides to go all in, and along with this, the protagonist hands him a sealed letter ordering him not to make a single mistake. The protagonist shows an evil, cheeky grin. He says, "The trap has already been set, and if Chen Yue makes a mistake and starts plotting against him, the outcome is already obvious in advance." Next, the following scene. We move to the day after this, and on the way home to you. VA asks about Gao Bei, and our protagonist replies that he has already gone ahead and warned the family about his arrival. Hearing this, the girl can only snort disdainfully in her thoughts, as if our protagonist will never make it home alive. But suddenly she is shocked when the protagonist calmly asks if they might run into bandits. Of course, she pretends to be scared and insists that he not say such ominous things, but the protagonist coldly notes that the unexpected can happen at any time. After that, she playfully waves it off, as if our young master is just joking. Almost at the same moment, the carriage suddenly stops abruptly. The protagonist instantly realizes the bandits have already arrived, just as was predicted. The leader of the bandits, Lian Lozan, clarifies whether those inside the carriage need a personal invitation to come out. To everyone's shock, our protagonist still steps outside. Amazingly calm, he addresses Li and Lozan and explains that they only have money and no goods, because this is not a trading caravan. Li and Lozan asks if that gold can save our protagonist's life. Inside the carriage, Chu Yue watches with a smile as our protagonist insists the bandit must take the money and leave him alive. Since the bandit already knows his identity, the bandit leader will definitely benefit if he helps him in the future. But in response, the bandit only sneers arrogantly and mockingly says that young Master Chu is a nobody in an empty place. He won't risk himself for him and would rather preserve his own reputation. Preserving his reputation will kill him. Seeing this, Chu Yue can barely contain her joy. She thinks sending Lian Luzon to assassinate our protagonist is truly the right decision. Chu Shu already understands himself that there is nothing to talk about with this man. He is beyond the bounds of common sense. If so, then he will not hold back. And just like that, suddenly, like a flash, he rushes forward. Bandit. The leader jumps up from his place and is completely confused for a moment. But in a moment, he recovers and swings his broadsword at our protagonist. At that very moment, Chu Shu realizes Liang Laoshan is not a true fighter because he lacks inner energy and relies only on brute strength. Moreover, his fighting style is extremely chaotic. So it is still too early for our protagonist to give up. There is still a chance, and Lian Lawson cannot believe that our protagonist really managed to deflect the blow. His sword strike cuts through the air. Regaining composure, he raises his two-handed sword again and launches an attack. Again, as expected, our protagonist instantly dodges, and very soon everything moves forward. The fight turns into a game of cat and mouse, but he still cannot land a single accurate hit on our protagonist. Looking from the side, the other bandits laugh and tease our protagonist for constantly dodging so weakly. In contrast to them, their boss is getting more and more furious because he still cannot land a single hit. As a result, he bursts out screaming and loses self-control with every moment. Our protagonist notices this and immediately realizes this is his chance. Then he draws his dagger and uses the blue dragon sleeve technique. In Lausanne, he barely manages to dodge in time, but Chu Shu is not finished yet. In that brief opening moment, he swings at Lian Lo Sen's side and manages to wound him in the process. Because of this, the bandit leader is forced to immediately break the distance while his subordinate anxiously watches over him. In his thoughts, Lian Lozan flares up. If he had not dodged in time, our protagonist could have taken his life. Our protagonist also thinks to himself that he has not practiced the Azure Dragon sleeve technique enough. Otherwise, Lian Losan would never have been able to dodge like that. Seeing how things have come to this, Lian Losan loudly gives the order to kill. And just like that, the whole company rushes at our protagonist, weapons at the ready. Only for a moment, they are interrupted by a voice. Who gave this idiot permission to kill without consulting first? Permission to kill without prior consultation with him. The newcomers simply turn out to be another gang of bandits. Their leader, Ma Kuo, he notes that he heard a huge prize awaits them here and insists that they share the pie. Shuyu expresses surprise upon seeing the newcomers, so she naturally assumes that they were prepared/arranged by the stepmother of our main hero. However, judging by Chushu's facial expression, this is by no means the case. Lian Laozhan immediately bursts into anger at Ma Kuo and declares, supposedly this is his territory. Ma Kuo does not deny this, but explains that Liang Laoxin repeatedly interfered in his affairs, so it is only natural for him to respond with a strike. And then with this, he attacks Lian Lozan with his sword, already received an injury after the clash with our protagonist. Liang Laosan hastily raises his weapon to intercept the blow. Unfortunately, his sword is immediately knocked out of his hand. As soon as this happens, he immediately tries to flee because he believes the wise always know when to retreat. However, Ma Kuo has no intention of letting him go. Lian Lazan does not manage to orient himself properly. As a result, he is cut cleanly and evenly in half, from the waist down. While Makuo gives that to finish off the rest of Lian Losen's people, our protagonist has already felt this. Before him is a true martial arts master, whereas Lian Losen is only self-taught, so the protagonist sincerely thanks him for the help. But Makuo tries to twist the situation, demanding an explanation of what makes our protagonist think that he came to save him. But at that very moment, Gaobei suddenly appears, grateful to have arrived on time. It turns out this was the task the protagonist gave him. Since Makuo has already received the letter, Chushu immediately makes a proposal. Kill him, and Makuo will get several thousand taels of silver, or if spared, he will definitely receive select ore to replace the pieces of metal they currently call weapons. Having already read the contents of the letter, Makuo sinks into deep thought, carefully considering the proposal. While he thinks this, Chushu looks around. Shu looks at the dead leader and mentally notes the obvious. All this is the doing of his stepmother, the father's second wife. Even being illegitimate with no real chance to inherit the family position, she still unhesitatingly decided to get rid of him. And of course, Chuyu also turned out to be here not by accident. That is why Chushu made his own preparations. If the stepmother can hire bandits to kill him, then he can hire bandits to protect himself. Having evaluated our hero's proposal, Makuo expresses doubt. Select ore is extremely valuable to the Chu clan. Our hero calmly agrees, but immediately adds that the family already wanted to see him dead and even expelled him. Since then, he truly has nothing to worry about regarding their interests, so he is ready to give the select ore at an unprecedentedly low price. Makuo admits that every great clan has its internal troubles, but Chushu behaves surprisingly straightforwardly. Before leaving, Makuo tells our hero that if he ever needs anything, he should come and find him. Moreover, he promises discounts if Chushu wants to get rid of someone among relatives or friends. The protagonist notes that the man truly has character. And what kind of character? Yet he understands that this time he survived only thanks to Gaobei. However, now it is finally time to deal with Yu Chu. Just look at how that smile spreads across our protagonist's face. Speaking of her, Chuyu begins to sweat profusely after realizing that her plans to kill our protagonist have completely failed. At the very moment Chushu enters the carriage, she immediately falls to her knees and takes on the appearance of a frightened little girl. Chushu decides to play along, although inwardly she thinks this maid really knows how to behave. And so when he asks if she is scared that her plan to kill him failed, she insists that her master is joking and asks why she would be disappointed at all. Chushu instantly tears off the mask, grabs her by the neck, and sternly asks if she really thinks he is a fool. He coldly warns, if she does not want to die, she should start talking. She struggles to breathe, she whines, begs to be released, and promises to tell everything. Our protagonist lets her go and demands explanations. Chuyue reveals, her mistress planned to kill him only because he once supported the elder brother, and they feared that in the future he might become a problem. Moreover, she had already gained the trust of his fourth brother. Now our protagonist gives a brief context about the Chu family. His father, Chu Zhongguan, has 4 wives. The first is the main wife, and her son is his elder brother, Chu Kai. The second wife is his stepmother, the lover of Chu Yue, mother of his second brother and third son, Chu Shang. Finally comes the third wife and her son, his fourth brother, Chu Shang. As we already know, Chu Shui's biological mother was only a concubine who died during childbirth. So although he was the second son by birth, he still remained illegitimate. It is precisely because of this that the original Chu Shu chose to support his elder brother and the main wife. He naturally assumed that Chu Kai would eventually inherit the position of head of the family. However, when Chu Sui was unjustly accused and framed by Chu Xiang, his elder brother did absolutely nothing to help him. Our protagonist thinks that the original Chushu was just like him in a past life. Being illegitimate, he simply resigned himself and did not fight for power. But this time everything will be different. He will seize the position of head of the family and use the Chu family's resources to become stronger. Next, our protagonist asks if Chu Yui has any evidence at all that this assassination attempt came from his stepmother. She shakes her head and explains, her mistress dealt directly with a trusted person who contacted the bandits, so she really has no evidence. She is overwhelmed with such fear that she throws herself at Chu Yue's feet and begs for mercy. The protagonist agrees and says that he does not harm women. Only then does she breathe a sigh of relief, already thinking she has escaped danger. But exactly in the next moment, Chu Yue sharply breaks her neck. He aloud wonders how the girl could be so naive. She was literally caught spying, and she still hoped to be spared. The next scene takes us 7 days later, in Weixian in Tongzhou. It is there that the Chu family mansion stands. As soon as our hero steps over the threshold, his stepmother, the second wife, immediately appears before him. Looking closely at her, the hero explains, she comes from an influential martial arts family. 20 years ago, his father's marriage to her helped him firmly establish himself within Tongzhou. Knowing how ruthless she is, the hero greets her joyfully and even shamelessly pays compliments on her appearance. Meanwhile, she wonders why he is still alive at all and whether that worthless Chu Yue failed such a simple task, allowing our hero to safely pass the dangerous path. However, she responds without any warmth and immediately asks Chu Shu about Chu Yue. Our hero shamelessly declares that the girl was too weak, so she couldn't handle him in bed, and died. Without batting an eye, he even throws out the idea that his stepmother sent him another maid instead of her. But she immediately cuts him off sharply and demands an explanation. She narrows her eyes sharply. If Chu Yue is really dead, then it turns out our hero is indirectly warning her. He already knows about the assassination attempt. And moreover, this Chu Shu is not at all the quiet boy who never dared to look her straight in the eyes before. When she leaves, she orders Chu Shu to come inside, saying that the family and his father are already waiting. As soon as our hero steps over the threshold, he immediately offers a polite greeting to the whole family. His father notices his return. To himself, our hero explains that his father is considered a powerful figure who overshadowed the Li family, the clan that he has dominated Tunzhou for centuries. Despite his youthful appearance, our protagonist reveals that this man is actually in his 50s, all because he has already reached the innate realm where life energy and blood fully condense. Usually his father did not concern himself with family matters. He was an obsessed cultivator. Unfortunately, despite his abilities, there has been no significant progress in the last 20 years. So, the protagonist's father begins a family meeting, announcing that the time has finally come. After what he has heard, he must choose a successor. The first wife immediately jumps up with a response, explaining that no such meetings are needed because her son is the eldest, and therefore naturally should inherit the future position in the family. However, the main character's stepmother quickly objects, pointing out that the Chu clan is not an imperial family where the eldest child automatically inherits everything. To this, the third wife, clearly playing the role of her accomplice, agrees, and adds that it will be much better if Chu Zhongguan personally decides which of the sons is worthy of the position. If so, Chu Zhongguan announces, each of his sons will be entrusted to manage different parts of the family business for 1 year, and whoever shows the greatest success after this period will inherit the position of family head. Hearing this, only the second and third wives support Father Chu Shu. Chu Shu himself only sneers contemptuously to himself. Even the family elders do not dare to contradict the will of his father. On the other hand, the first wife and her son, Chu Kai, both mother and son have very arrogant natures. They even allow themselves to argue with the father. It is no wonder that the man cannot stand them. Meanwhile, his stepmother ruthlessly calculates every move. Even a fox would envy her, and her son, Chu Shen, is not so clever. He cannot even hide his own weakness. There was a third wife in this family. In words, she appears smart and indifferent to the position of family leader, but in reality, she only cautiously hides her ambitions. After all, Father Chu Shu loves her more, and he is also most favorably disposed towards her son, Chu Shang. However, the strangest of all is his father. This man never showed interest in family affairs, so Chu Shu naturally assumes that he does not care much about whom to choose as heir. As expected, his first wife. She turns to Chu Shu, relying on his former loyalty. The old Chu Shu would have indeed sided with her and opposed the father's decision regarding the heir. But to everyone's surprise, Chu Shu stands up and clearly states that he supports his father's will. Both the first and second wives freeze in shock at his answer. Chu Shu's elder brother bursts into the conversation angrily, demands an explanation of what absurdity this is, and orders Chu Shu to correct himself. He immediately cuts off, saying that his brother is still not the head of the family, but dares to behave so arrogantly in front of everyone. But if that day comes, he will become the head. And Chu Shu does not even need to explain what awaits the Chu family. Chu Kei instantly bursts into rage, but their father interrupts and orders him to be silent. He declares that his decision will not change, so the matter is considered settled. After this, Chu Shu calmly asks his father to expand his business responsibilities. He has been managing the mines for years, And even his father knows that under the current restrictions, there will be no progress. Chu Chongguan had no idea that his son would suddenly be consumed by ambition. Meanwhile, his three wives perceived this bold declared intention as if Chu Shu was aiming for a position in the heavens. At that very moment, one of the elders, the chief manager, stepped forward and pointed out that the mining district already belonged to the Chu family business, so Chu Shu should not push his luck. In response, Chu Shu gestured for the man to come closer and said he had something. Tell him. Manager Lu approaches, still holding on to his pride, unaware of the boundary he has already crossed. Without wasting time, Chu Shu suddenly punches him in the stomach. He chokes and coughs up blood, but this is not the end of it. Chu Shu continues to beat him mercilessly. Other family members remain only to watch in horror while the attack continues, precisely at the moment when his stepmother begins to guess whether Chu Shu has not lost his mind. His father suddenly bursts into rage and demands an explanation. Did Chu Shu dare to show him disrespect? And in front of everyone. Only then does Chu Shu fall silent. He calmly wonders when some servant began speaking so freely with the young master of the family. He even wants to think whether his year of absence and his father's reclusiveness made the servants forget their place. Chu Shu notes that the father is too kind. If he were with him in the mines, that servant would have died without even realizing what happened. He is not as merciful as his father. The man cannot argue. Although Manager Li is connected to the family of the first wife, he still remains only a servant. The father finally understands his reclusiveness really made some servants forget their place. To save face, Chu Chongguan punishes Chu Shu, deducting 3 months' salary from him, and directs this money to cover Manager Lu's medical bill. Chu Shu respects his father's decision, but still insists that he cannot survive by managing only with his mind if he is expected to participate in the battle for succession. And now Chu Chongguan is cornered. Inside, he admits he never intended for Chu Shu to get involved in the succession battle at all, but refusing him now means openly admitting it. It is then that the first wife suddenly speaks. She, along with the whole family, emphasizes how ridiculous it is and points out that Chu Shu just attacked someone right before their eyes. In response, Chu Chongguan coldly asks what exactly she expects from him. She immediately falls silent. As a result, he grants Chu Shu authority over the travel caves. Chu Shu respectfully bows low and thanks his father, but in his thoughts he mocks treacherously. The first wife and her son, despite their powerful origin, she argues fiercely with the father, and her son is utterly worthless. In a word, they have already lost, the end for them. The family meeting ends just like that, and Chu Chongguan orders everyone to disperse. To everyone. As soon as they leave, the second wife cannot help but stare intently at Chu Shu. At first, she was sure the main rival would be the first wife, but she never guessed that Chu Shu would change so much in just a year. Later, at the residence of the second lady, Chu Sheng immediately asks his mother about the people she arranged to have Chu Shu killed, but she admits she miscalculated and underestimated him. However, she assures her son not to panic. After Chu Shu's behavior at the meeting, there is no chance he will become the successor. The first wife and her son are already a lost cause, and Chuxian is too young, so Chuxian remains the most suitable candidate. When her son mentions the caravan staff, she shows a wicked smile. These people are under her control, so she believes that Chu Shu cannot influence even one of them. The next scene, the pharmacy of the Chu Shu family, Chu Shu enters together with Gao Bei. He enters together with Gao Bei. It turns out he came to collect his share of cultivation resources, which he had not mentioned for years. Gao Bei points this out, but Chu Shu only replies that everything has changed now. As expected, one of the workers meets him with a contemptuous expression and mocks the trash young master for even appearing in the pharmacy. When Gao Bei informs that Chu Shu came to take back his resources, which Chu Kai had been taking all this time, the man swells up even more and becomes even more insolent. Slightly irritated, Chu Shu asks if he ever gave permission to transfer his resources to Chu Kai. The ignorant servant replies with feigned humility, "If he has complaints, let him go and deal with Chu Kai." Chu Shu was already about to put him properly in his place. But unfortunately, at that very moment, the manager arrives and immediately slaps the subordinate. He shouts, demanding, "Does that man have a head of iron to dare speak like that to the other young gentleman?" The worker tries to respond, but this only fuels the anger even more. This angers the manager even more. He is essentially asking if the fool is already tired of living. Turning respectfully to Chu Shu, the manager begs for forgiveness, explaining that the employee was simply ignorant, and as compensation, he even offers blood-thinning pills and other resources for cultivation. Chu Shu leaves after the warning that this must not happen again, and the manager breathes a sigh of relief. Confused, the employee asks why he was hit. The manager replies it was for his own good, as the job demands. Parker is shocked when the manager explains. If he had not intervened in time, Chushu would have beaten him so badly that he would already be paying off his medical bills. Arthur warns him, never dare to offend Chusha again, because the Chusha they see now is not at all like before. The next scene takes us to the neglected house belonging to our protagonist. Inside, Galbei cannot help but start praising how incredible our protagonist was in the medical hall, but he just brushes it aside. And then he seriously adds, "It is fear that truly makes people respect." Hearing this, Galbei scratches the back of his head and honestly admits that he does not understand. Our protagonist agrees but emphasizes that if Galbei had truly grasped such things, he would never have remained just a servant all these years. It becomes serious again. Our hero reflects that in martial arts, both talent and understanding matter. And since he currently lacks both, he decides to focus only on stubbornness and perseverance. With this in his hands, he uses the medicine and pills he got at the pharmacy and notes that the leader turned out to be clever enough to immediately solve the problem by providing him with additional resources. With these supplies, the hero is confident that he can gather enough energy to develop his innate art. He explains that cultivating, refining this innate art far surpasses ordinary techniques because it enhances the results of training. Every time a person trains more, their internal energy becomes stronger. After a whole day of cultivation, our protagonist already feels the result and finally decides that it is time to move on to sword practice. Even before starting cultivation, he ordered Galbei to prepare wooden stakes for him. The protagonist rushes into motion, like lightning. As soon as he swings the sword, everything around seems to obey his pace. It turns out that even this is part of training the Slew Azure dragon technique. After the exercises, Galbei comes in with tea and some news. It turns out he found out that the leaders and chiefs of the traveling caravan are all people connected to his stepmother. So it will be incredibly difficult and unobstructed for the young master to advance further. When our main hero asks where he got such information, Galbei explains. He overheard conversations of the maids working for his stepmother. Hearing this, our hero barely smiles. Not only is this maid trying to complicate his life, she also wants the caravan people to be forced to humiliate him. Because of this, he informs Galbei that tomorrow they will set out for Mount Shanman to find Makuo. Galbei almost freezes from shock, but Chuchu instantly calms him down. Bandits do not eat people. Moreover, Makuo will definitely be a useful reinforcement. The next day, our hero finally meets Makuo. Before revealing anything, he advises Makuo to send his people away. But Makuo only shook his head and replied that his subordinates are like brothers. Without delaying anything, our protagonist states that Makuo is not a real bandit. Makuo chuckles slightly and immediately asks, if he is not a bandit, then who the hell could he be? Barely does the protagonist say that Makuo is actually a bandit and a member of the 36 Bandits of the North, when his face instantly pales from shock. Without having time to fully process everything, Makuo suddenly lunges forward and attacks the protagonist, but the strike is easily parried. Instantly closing this distance, our protagonist presses a dagger right to Makuo's neck and immediately warns him to order his men to lay down their arms and stop. He adds that even if Makuo hides his identity, it won't last long. The Northern Yan will soon put a bounty on his head. Of course, Makuo asks how our protagonist knows who he really is. Our protagonist explains that the bandit Makuo fights very differently from ordinary bandits. He uses an orthodox martial style. Moreover, he once used the word Killian, the name directly linked to Killian Iron Cavalry, which, as it turns out, is among the 36 bandits of the North. After hearing this, Makuo admits that our protagonist is truly impressive. Of course, our protagonist knows all this only thanks to the game's lore. He explains that about 10 years ago, Northern Yan plunged into chaos, which allowed the Northern bandits to rise to power, and they even dared to rob the imperial court itself. However, Northern Yan changed the course of events. Then Northern Yan recovered and joined forces with Northern Snow City, a powerful sect. During the suppression of the bandits, they were either killed or maimed, and according to the game, the only place where the surviving remnants fled is Weishi County. After this became clear, Makuo demands to know what exactly our protagonist wants after revealing his true identity. Our protagonist calmly, without unnecessary emotion, tells him that he knows the location of the leader of the Iron Cavalry Killian, the Heavenly King with the red-faced Peng Chu. It turns out that Makuo has a completely different, real leader. Upon hearing this, Makuo immediately decides that our protagonist is lying, Therefore, he explains, he must meet Makuo's superiors personally. Only then can the truth be verified. Considering this, Makuo still agrees to lead our protagonist further, but warns, it will take several days to reach their boss in the northern part of the mountain. The story takes us to a bandit stronghold, hidden deep in the northern Shangmen mountain range. It seems that several similar fortresses are scattered along the entire ridge. Makuo orders our protagonist to wait while he reports to his superiors himself. Shortly after, a man enters the room. Makuo introduces him as Han Bao, his boss and the personal bodyguard of the leader of the Killian Iron Cavalry. As soon as he appears, our protagonist immediately gets to work. The protagonist immediately got to work as soon as he noticed that Han Bao is in the realm of blood thickening, so he is much stronger than him. As expected, Han Bao did not believe his words and even threatened to kill our protagonist if he was lying. In response, the protagonist ordered Han Bao to go to the desert mountain in the northern Liaodong County. There, the leader of the Killian Iron Cavalry was secretly recovering from wounds sustained in a clash with the imperial court. And now, as they suddenly revealed themselves, everyone was in shock. Judging by their expressions, the protagonist insisted someone must be sent to scout. The scout will even come across the local symbol of the Killian Iron Cavalry. The protagonist honestly did not expect that small details from the game would become so useful. Hearing this, Han Bao decided to send someone to verify the information and at the same time asked what our protagonist wanted in return. The protagonist first inquired what exactly Han Bao planned to do after finding his boss. Bao replies that it is quite natural for him to gather the entire fortress together and reunite with the leader. Because of this, our hero immediately explains, Penhu is still recovering. Too many people around him. That is unnecessary attention and will only increase the risk of exposure. Instead, Han Bao should focus on accumulating money and resources for cultivation to support his leader's recovery. Han Bao agrees with this logic, but immediately raises another question. Our hero still hasn't said what he wants in return. In response, he calmly states that he wants to cooperate with Han Bao to earn serious money. This time, Han Bao suddenly lights up with interest and asks, explain the deep details. Shushu begins by saying that the general bandit trade has long overheated. There are too many bandits in the region, so caravans simply stop coming and take other routes. Carefully, as is proper, the protagonist explains, this situation exists only because there are no rules here. He suggests to Han Bao not to rob caravans directly, but to bring order, take commissions and guard them until the end of the route. But Han Bao immediately replies, if he does that, he will become an enemy to every other bandit in the mountains. As a result, Han Bao dies. Now he is part of the Han Bao family. This prompts Chu Shu to ask if he is afraid. Han Bao answers without hesitation, no, and explains that he has stayed aside so far only because during a clash with the imperial court, he was the one who got injured. The protagonist is silently shocked by this news. It looks like he clearly underestimated the true strength of Han Bao. Despite this, Han Bao admits that our protagonist gave him a great idea and again asks what he wants in return. The protagonist says the obvious. He wants the Chu family caravan to safely pass through the Shangmong mountain without obstacles. However, he also wants Han Bao to personally kill someone for him. Han Bao immediately agrees and asks to specify exactly who needs to be killed. The protagonist explains that when the time comes, he will send the information in advance. Han Bao suddenly laughed. At that very moment, our protagonist casually adds that Han Bao should also rob a caravan, saying let it be a welcoming gift. Han Bao instantly froze and aloud wondered if the protagonist really just asked him to rob a caravan. Our protagonist calmly clarifies that the caravan belongs to the Chu family, not to him. Personally, Boss Han Bao agrees, although in his soul he cannot help but think that the protagonist is truly ruthless, targeting his own family. At this point, our protagonist ends the conversation, noting that he will send the necessary information in advance via a carrier pigeon. In the family estate, 2 residents, workers bustle about, loading the caravan. Into the passage enters our angry protagonist, who immediately demands to know who gave them permission to depart. The leader quickly stands up to greet him respectfully, but our protagonist coldly asks if he is responsible here. Wearing a flattering smile, the leader begins to deny and shows that the responsible one is indeed our protagonist. So our protagonist again asks the same question, adding inquiries about travel plans, operational costs, and expected profit. The leader does not even raise an eyebrow, brushing off the interrogation. He says he has already received permission from the family lord, the father of our protagonist. Confidently, he assures everything will be fine and even declares aloud that if any trouble occurs, he is ready to accept punishment. At this moment, our protagonist quietly laughs to himself, hoping the man will regret his action later. Meanwhile, the leader interprets this reaction as understanding and secretly contemptuously looks over our protagonist as if he were a fool. After all, he has led caravans for years without any problems, regardless of whether it was a man or a woman. This is a man, 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 this is a man. Only when the caravan sets off does our protagonist simply wish him luck. Our protagonist immediately orders Gao Bei to inform Han Bao. Later, while the caravan was moving, its members whispered among themselves about our protagonist. One of the men expresses concern that the manager might have offended him by noting that our protagonist has become a completely different person lately. The manager agrees but casually remarks that they only obey Chushun, the second brother of our protagonist. Brother, his companion nodded but still harbored doubt. What if the manager fears nothing and harsh retaliation? The manager confidently cut in that the Chu clan has rules. Therefore, the protagonist cannot harm him under any circumstances. But despite this, the second man could not calm down. He honestly admitted that he constantly felt uneasy, and this whole story troubled him again and again. It was then that the manager remembered the main thing and instructed everyone. If robbers appear on the road, they must immediately drop the cargo and save their own lives first. Eventually, night falls, and the manager decides to set up camp in a rather large cave, not even suspecting that the whole group has just stepped right into the trap of our protagonist. As soon as the robbers appear, the manager immediately shouts to everyone to run away. One shout from him, and the caravan members scatter in all directions, gripped by panic. Unfortunately for him, this will not happen. Makuo is already waiting nearby, and only then does the manager start the conversation. He immediately understood. It was a carefully prepared ambush. Makuo calmly agrees before passing on the message from our protagonist to him. At that very moment, the poor fellow finally realizes his mistake, but it was already too late. As a result, Makuo instantly kills him. That was the end of it. Makuo gives an order to his men to open the cargo and see what kind of friendly gift our protagonist left for them. The news about the caravan's kidnapping quickly reaches the home of the Chushu family. On the way to the main hall, Chuxian, the second brother of our protagonist, quietly asks their mother if it could be the work of the protagonist himself. The mother shakes her head. Her son neither has the means nor the ability to hire bandits. But despite this, she insists, let the son remain silent until they get real evidence. In the main hall, those who survived have just finished reporting to our protagonist's father everything that happened. The father of our protagonist does not worry about business at all. He is almost ready to dismiss everyone and return to seclusion when suddenly our protagonist speaks. He points out, the caravan members are scared and without a guide. Therefore, he wants to personally lead them through Shangmengshan once again. Of course, everyone freezes in shock. Breaking Chu Zhongguan's orders is one thing, but voluntarily rushing into what looks like certain death is pure madness. Suppressing his own irritation, our protagonist's father demanding asks what exactly he means. He emphasizes our protagonist has no experience escorting caravans. So isn't he just trying to stir up trouble? Hearing this, our protagonist calmly replies, someone must immediately take control of the situation. They cannot delay, and as a direct descendant of the Chu family, it is natural for him to take responsibility upon his own shoulders. As always, Chu Zhongguan understands that our protagonist is right. Moreover, he is surprised when exactly such a strong sense of responsibility grew in his son. So he allows our protagonist to personally lead the caravan, but immediately warns him to be extremely careful. Our protagonist politely thanks him for the permission, for such an opportunity. Meanwhile, Chuxiang can only snort disdainfully to himself, convinced that his brother has completely lost his mind by voluntarily getting involved in such a dangerous task. Then the scene shifts outside. As expected, as soon as the news spreads somewhere, the gossiping servants are far from lost. The caravan workers feel powerless after abandoning their comrades during the attack, so they can't even think about stopping the rumors flying behind their backs. At this moment, the secret agent arrives and loudly orders the men to prepare to depart towards the Yan state. But obedience does not happen. Instead, he is met with a stream of endless complaints and excuses. It is then that our protagonist finally realizes how foolish his father's decisions were in some matters. He focused only on military exercises and neglected family affairs to a dangerous extent. In a frenzy, our protagonist shouts at the workers, "Stop looking for excuses," and all who are truly wounded step forward immediately. Of course, the men instantly fall silent. This only angers our protagonist even more. Angrier, the Chu family pays these cowards 10 times more than ordinary workers, yet they still behave the same way. Because of this, our protagonist orders Galbei to hire replacement workers, promising them higher profits and additional bonuses. As soon as they hear this, the workers immediately begin begging for one more chance. Our protagonist coldly makes it clear to them he will give only one last opportunity. And so the caravan sets off again, as if everything is going perfectly, as if perfectly on time. One of Humbeo's subordinates suddenly appears with a group of bandits, blocking our hero's path. The workers immediately panic. Some already begin to regret every decision in life, but they do not understand exactly how they ended up in this situation. However, this whole story is only part of our protagonist's plan. Our hero simply tells Galbei what exactly he must do. The matter is settled. Our hero steps forward and calmly warns the bandits. As soon as they try to move, the caravan will immediately set the cargo on fire. After these words, the workers involuntarily fall silent. Ordinary bandits usually do not care about goods at all. Most of them live for one thing, killing and robbing in the moment. Meanwhile, Brother Feng proudly approaches our protagonist and says that he definitely has courage. In response, the protagonist challenges him to a duel. The condition is simple. If the protagonist loses, Brother Feng can do whatever he wants with the caravan. But if he wins, Brother Feng and his men must leave peacefully. Brother Feng bursts out with a contemptuous laugh and declares that given the protagonist's strength, it would be a miracle if he could even kill a chicken. Yet despite this, he still agrees to the duel. In the Chu family, everyone knows, besides Chu Chongyuan himself, the strongest direct descendant is the eldest son, Chu Kai. Of course, the workers fear for our protagonist. In general shock, the protagonist suddenly springs from his place, lightning fast like a shadow, and strikes first. Brother Feng swiftly jumps back and immediately retaliates with a sword thrust. Our protagonist parries the attack with his own blade, and a fierce exchange of blows begins. Now the workers can hardly believe their own eyes, and one of them even aloud wonders if our protagonist has been deliberately hiding his strength all this time. Ultimately, our protagonist emerges victorious, but only because the entire fight was carefully stopped. Everything was prearranged in advance. Seeing this, Brother Feng admits defeat and prepares to leave with his men. However, our protagonist suddenly stops him. We're completely stunned by what they saw, and despite their reactions, the protagonist explains, there is no guarantee that later they will not encounter another group of bandits. Because of this, he offers Brother Fang a sum of money in exchange for the caravans being safely escorted. Brother Fang agrees without hesitation. The caravan crew immediately begins. They quickly conclude, this outcome is actually beneficial. Some even cannot help but wonder why such an idea had not occurred before. A few days later, inside the private cultivation chamber of Chalord, Lieutenant has just finished reporting everything to our protagonist's father. The elder explains, the protagonist successfully completed the journey in 10 days. But the father is more concerned about something else. What could have happened if the plan had failed? The elder begins to lay everything out further. He says that the band of robbers the protagonist encountered was incredibly formidable. That is why, when such people guarded the caravan, no other robbers dared to approach. Moreover, it seems these robbers turned the whole arrangement into a business. Now they openly take payment from traveling merchants for protection in exchange for safe passage. However, our hero's father suddenly bursts into rage as soon as the elder suggests he spend more time with his children. Chu Zhongguan instantly reminds the old man of his research and insists he cannot stop, especially now, having already paid such a terrible price for it. Hearing this, the elder openly disagrees, but eventually still leaves the room without saying anything more. Meanwhile, our hero has been training tirelessly since returning from the state of Yan. Even Gao Bei notices this, remarking that the young master looks especially passionate after the journey. Returning from the state of Yan, even Gao Bei notices this and comments that his young master is extremely fired up after the trip. Inside his thoughts, our main hero knows he must become stronger as soon as possible. In the game, the original Chushu only became a villain after major upheavals within the Chu family. Unfortunately, the game never properly explained what happened. This means he must prepare in advance if he wants to survive any disaster that is already looming. And for now, someone silently watches him from the shadows. The secret observer suddenly turns out to be his third brother. Chushin frowns as he thinks that our protagonist has already been allowed to take the reins of the caravan affairs, and now they have become extremely profitable. Forget about Chukai. If this continues, his main rival might suddenly turn into our protagonist. Just then his mother appears, and instead of answering, asks Chuxiang what he is doing. Chuxiang tells her they cannot allow the management of the caravan business to remain in the hands of our protagonist. At first, the mother thinks her son just wants to take over the affairs himself. However, Chuxiang notes that their father will never directly hand over such power to him. Instead, he plans to use the younger brother, Chuxiang. Of course, the mother immediately agrees, as Chuxiang is almost the golden child in the family. Next, the scene shifts to the residence of the third wife. As expected, the second wife immediately visits both the third wife and her son. She asks about the current affairs of Chuxiang. His mother explains, the weapons business yields little profit, and the son is still young, not eager to become the head of the family, so their current position is generally sufficient. And just as the second wife says that she came exactly with the opportunity to earn even more, both mother and son flinch, freeze, and then recover in a moment. The third wife already allowed wonders in a second how this is even possible if the master head distributed all the affairs among all his sons. The answer comes in the form of a quite ordinary question from Chuxiang's mother. Supposedly, can't they just exchange them? And at the same time, she subtly hints that our protagonist's caravan business is now bringing in crazy profits. Strangely, no one had any idea that the youngest brother would turn out to be so greedy. And so just like that, our protagonist and his younger brother, are urgently called to the father's presence. He really lectures them about loyalty to the family and brotherly bonds, although their relationship is already so bad that one could start cutting each other right before his eyes. As is proper, the father wants our protagonist to hand over the caravan business to Chuxiang so that the boy gains practical experience. Well, of course, very convenient. While the business was dangerous, no one wanted to let the golden child near it. But as soon as the routes became safe, profitable, and full of useful acquaintances, it was suddenly declared practical training. Classic attitude towards the golden child, no less. But despite everything our hero perfectly understands, he cannot openly contradict his father, so he is forced to accept this without resistance. He silently watches as his father even looks for an expert named Lin Qian to personally protect Chuxian, for which the younger boy gratefully thanks their father. If earlier our hero was angry, now he is truly furious. That expert is actually from the field of blood condensation. When the danger was real, he only heard from his father a dry, "Be careful." And now, a real specialist is assigned to accompany the younger brother. The father's bias is visible to the naked eye. This is noticed by the same petty impudence. And thanks to our hero, he demonstratively stretches a haughty smile. In response, our hero only tells Chuxian, "Be careful and take good care of yourself." And of all possible options, this fool, unfortunately, chose to offend the worst possible victim. Now he definitely will not live peacefully for at least the next few chapters. The next scene takes us to the caravan courtyard. The workers have already heard the news. Although they can hardly do anything to oppose the fourth young master, it is said, as soon as you mention him, and he is here. The young man himself soon arrives with guards and arrogantly asks if this is the caravan team. The manager immediately replies, "Yes, everyone has already been accounted for." As soon as Chushan orders to pack up, because they will depart tomorrow. The manager cautiously tries to persuade him, saying the workers only returned yesterday, and usually our protagonist lets them rest at least 4 days before the next trip. Unfortunately, just mentioning the protagonist, and Chushan immediately gets irritated. The leader immediately tries to backtrack, but Chushan coldly orders him to be silent, then threatens to relieve them all of their duties. Seeing this, the whole team unanimously concludes the fourth young master is simply unbearable, too authoritarian. And the next day, our hero even personally helps his younger brother load several boxes. To provoke him even more, the little braggart arrogantly asks if our hero has anything he wants to say. As always, he only advises, "Keep your ears sharp on the road." Chang walks away, inwardly mocking our hero and confident that nothing will happen with Lin Chen nearby. What a foolish child. He does not understand this. Our protagonist has already prepared everything behind the scenes. The next scene takes us to the gang in Stronghold. Inside, Boss Han Bao cannot express gratitude to our protagonist even half as much. Thanks to Chushu, they not only took full control of the mountain over other bandits, but also launched a completely legal business, and it brings huge profits. Knowing where this conversation is heading, Chushu insists drinking and celebrating can wait. He came with something urgent. When Boss Han, Bao thinks aloud about who the target is. Our protagonist reveals without any hints that it is his younger brother, Chushang. Of course, Boss Han Bao is stunned. You don't see a person hitting the target right at themselves every day. Brother. Still, Boss Han Bao wonders if this will again be the same scenario as in the previous incident, when Chushu killed the manager but spared everyone else. Then our hero properly explains. He does not want his younger brother to die. The real target is Lin Chang, because Chushan is still his own blood. Now, Boss Han Bao has the expression of a person who simply cannot comprehend what is going on in another man's head. Eventually, he becomes completely silent. Although our hero does not wish death upon his brother, he still gives the order to Boss Han Bao to maim him. And for someone who grew up in a martial family, this is almost the same as dying. Seeing his facial expression, our hero explains that he cannot allow his brother to die because Chushang is the golden son of the family. Of course, Boss Han Bao immediately understands everything. If such a thing happens, the head of the family will probably go mad. Still, he explains that if it were not for his injury, he would have already dealt with our hero's father and later with the Shen family. However, our hero further warns that it is dangerous to rush. The protagonist points out that the man still has not fully recovered, so nothing risky should be done. After that, he says he wants to personally hire Makuo, because besides Gao Bei, he has few people who are truly loyal. Moreover, Makuo turns out to be clever and extremely skilled, so this is the ideal option. Boss Han Bao, however, points out a problem and asks what will happen if people find out Makuo's identity. Our protagonist reassures him that Makuo only operated in the southern part of Xiangmen Mountain, so no one in Tongzhou Prefecture would recognize him. When asked if he is interested, he immediately agrees because he has long felt trapped inside the base. Changing the subject, Boss Han Boa demands, exactly how will they advance the operation? The protagonist suggests attacking the caravan on the way back. This will look less suspicious. For this very reason, Boss Han Bao insists that they celebrate properly after the mission is completed. Our hero agrees, joking that maybe he will even bring some baby oil. At dawn, our hero sets out together with Ma Kuo and his immediate subordinates. On the way, they are caught up by Brother Feng. Aloud, he wonders why Ma Kuo is dressed differently. Ma Kuo responds, as we already know, then asks what this big one is doing here. Brother Feng awkwardly explains, they are waiting for the Luo family caravan to collect taxes and protection fees, but the caravan arrives much earlier than expected. Our hero immediately stops it and clarifies whether by Luo he means the minor Luo clan from the town of Shuangfeng. Brother Feng nods, noting that they received all this is information from the intelligence network of our protagonist. Therefore, our protagonist makes a special request. Of course, Brother Feng agrees without any hesitation. After receiving his instructions, Brother Feng reassures our guy he will handle the task himself and will not cause any problems. And what exactly is behind this, our protagonist explains. In the game, the Luo family acquires a collection of secret chests, several of which contain treasures and combat techniques. In the initial storyline, this eventually leads to the extermination of their clan. If one word becomes known, rumors spread. In other words, our protagonist, having robbed them, actually saves what would have destroyed them to protect them from trouble. Eventually, the moment comes when the Luo family caravan must move on and slip away from trouble in time. They are heading through the mountains. Usually at this moment, it is here that taxes and additional escort fees must be paid. Therefore, when the caravan leader offers 10% of the cargo's value, Brother Fan suddenly goes mad. He snatches and sharply throws away the money, ordering them to get lost and abandon the cargo. And as soon as this is said, the men immediately flee, leaving everything behind without hesitation. Then the brother protagonist turned to him, and Fan made a remark, saying the task was simple, and that was exactly how it was intended. However, he was confused when the protagonist stubbornly requested only the secret boxes, leaving the rest of the cargo untouched. At that very moment, the protagonist realized he was confidently led to an extraordinary treasure. The next scene takes us to the Chu family estate. At home, the protagonist opens the boxes and finds two valuable items. The first is a combat manual. Bloodblade Manual is an unorthodox third-level technique of the Kingdom of Transformation. Its sole purpose is to kill, In the game, this martial art is cultivated by a demonic sect. Thousand Leaf Plume is a powerful hidden weapon forged by a mighty sect during the Cataclysm event. A single hidden projectile from it can kill a person at the innate level, which is the level achieved by the father of our protagonist. Despite this, our protagonist decides to focus on learning the Bloodblade technique. 10 days later, Chusheng's caravan was already heading back to the family residence. Chusheng wears a smug smile on his face, thinking about how incredibly easy the journey turned out to be, not to mention the huge profits he earned. Just in time, Brother Feng and his men block the road, as usual. One of the workers approaches and extends money, but Brother Feng immediately gets annoyed. The commission is far too meager. The worker panics, explaining that they know the rules and would never dare to do anything foolish. Because of this, Brother Feng orders his men to search the cargo. Chusheng instantly explodes with rage and is ready to speak up. But one of the workers quickly stops him. He reminds him, this is bandit territory, so nothing extra can be done. Nothing that could ruin everything. Boldness is not forgiven here, so Chusheng has no choice but to allow this pressure. Just like that, Brother Feng's men begin inspecting the cargo after the search. After that, one of his subordinates quietly whispers something into Brother Feng's ear. Then he remarks aloud that the value of the cargo is about 6,000 taels. So it turns out the previous commission they offered was by no means sufficient. Patience has snapped. Chusheng finally loses it. He shouts, demanding to know what this price on the cargo is about. The servant standing nearby simply cannot utter a word. The smartest thing would be to just pay more, not argue. It seems this man only now realized that Chuxian is somewhat greedy. Of course, Brother Feng is not the type to tolerate nonsense from a spoiled brat. It is precisely because of this that Chuxian insists his uncle handled this matter the right way. Lin Kaiyan steps forward. His voice flows with familiar arrogance and demands to let them pass before Brother Feng does something he will later regret. Zhu Shan immediately picks up his words, proudly declaring that this is the power of a true master, and no pathetic bandits can do anything about it. He even compares himself to our protagonist, mockingly calling him a coward who, after victory, still obeyed the bandits' rules. Hearing this, the workers are finally convinced. This brat is both greedy and stupid, especially compared to our protagonist, who resolved everything both with strength and dignity, like a true noble young master. Not long after, Boss Hanbao finally steps forward, completely tired of the tantrums of this spoiled fool. At the moment Boss Hanbao faces Lin Kaiyan, the man's pupils twitch in shock. He clearly did not expect that someone from the blood condensation realm, someone very close to breaking through to the innate realm, would be among the bandits' ranks. His pupils instantly narrow from shock. He never expected that someone at the level of blood condensation, someone already very close to breaking through to the innate realm, would be among the bandits' ranks. As a result, Lin Chen quickly tries to convince leader Han Bao, but unfortunately he has no intention of listening. Everyone watches as Boss Han Bao casually cuts the horse in half with one strike. Fortunately, Lin Chen manages to dodge the attack, although he can barely hide his disbelief that some ordinary bandit knows military martial arts. Boss Han Bao swings his sword again, commenting along the way that he hates the imperial court. Only their swords clash. The difference in strength becomes obvious. Xincheng was instantly thrown back, and Boss Hanbao does not give him a single second of rest. At this moment, Lin Chang can only watch as his life flashes before his eyes. And just like that, Boss Hanbao kills him. The outcome leaves Chu Xiang completely stunned, as he had no idea that this war would end this way. Immediately after this, Boss Hanbao orders his men to seize the cargo. Understanding that it is about to happen, Chushin panics and again tries to hide behind his family name. The worker standing nearby can only sigh with sympathy, noting that the Chu family name means nothing in these mountains. Contrary to the worker's expectations, Boss Hanbao decides to show some respect to the Chu family by sparing Chu Shang's life. However, the cargo and the workers are a completely different matter. Zhan watches as his own workers are cut down one by one, and he doesn't care, not even a bit, as long as he himself survives. But to his shock, Boss Hanbao suddenly grabs him and forcefully throws him to the ground. Sticking out his foot, the bandit brutally breaks all the limbs in Chu Shang's body to pieces, each time reminding him he only promised to spare his life. He never said he wouldn't maim him. 3 days later, Chushu is noticed as he trains with a bloody blade technique. As soon as he finishes mine, Ma Guo, who quietly observed, could not help but wonder where his master got such an unorthodox technique. It definitely is not from the righteous path. In response, Chushu calmly parries. The purpose of martial arts is to kill, so it does not matter which technique the striker uses. The answer deeply impresses Manhwa. He also notes to himself how quickly Chushu is progressing. Only a few days ago, that man barely managed to kill Liang Laosan. But now Manhwa is no longer sure he can defeat his master. He could defeat him. At that very moment, one of Chushu's subordinates enters with a report. The content has long been known to everyone. After listening, Chushu realizes his old man is furious, so he decides to move. Straight to the family hall. Inside the family hall, Chushan lies on a stretcher, and all 4 limbs are wrapped in bandages. The politician steps forward to explain the situation, and just as Chushu finishes this, Chushu's father explodes with rage. His son will remain bedridden and crippled for life. Trying to stir up the quarrel, Chushin, the third brother of Chushu, asks about his calm reaction. He even asked if Chushu secretly enjoys the suffering of his younger brother, or perhaps he himself arranged everything. Feigning anger, Chushu immediately retorted and insisted that he is angrier than anyone because he was the first to pass the matter to Chuxiang. Even if he cried now, it would not heal Chuxiang. Returning to his father, Chushu insists that now is not the time for tears and says they need to decide what to do next. Hearing this, the father allowed him to voice his thoughts. Chushu's proposal boiled down to 2 options. The first, revenge. However, this option is almost impossible because the bandits have already managed to kill a person of the same strength as Lin Qian. If they decide to respond recklessly, the Chu family may suffer even greater losses. The second option, forget everything, as the matter simply cannot continue to suffer losses. His father focused a thoughtful gaze on the proposal, weighing every word, and then finally concluded that Chushu is right, nothing surprising. And almost everyone agrees with the second option. The first is too risky. No one really knows the full strength of those bandits. The elder family speaks unanimously, pressures the patriarch, and asks to carefully reassess everything. Seeing this, Chushu can only defiantly grimace in his thoughts. In his eyes, the rest of the family are nothing more than scoundrels. Everyone thinks only of themselves and never truly cares about the family. Yet despite this, the third wife continues to demand justice for her son. In response, Chushu's father coldly asks what exactly she wants from him. He cannot put the entire clan at risk for one bedridden son, and even suspects that the boy brought this misfortune upon himself. Next, the chief workshop manager comes out, explaining that seeking revenge would be unwise. Instead, one should simply respect the bandits and their territory. If they try to change the route toward the Yan state, they will only accumulate colossal losses. Because of this, Chushu's father asks if there is anyone who will take charge of the caravan's affairs. Unfortunately, his legitimate sons are all cowards. And why wait for a miracle if the bandits easily killed even such a strong man as Lin Chen? So of course, all eyes focus on Chushu. The old manager even emphasizes that Chushu previously managed the caravan successfully, so he could simply regain control. But Chushu immediately understands. The old man is trying to make him the scapegoat. Yet the old manager is not categorically against him. When Chushu's father agrees to the proposal, the manager suddenly asks if the family still adheres to the house rules. Chushu's father frowns and demands an answer as to what kind of question that is. Because of course, they still follow those rules, as they should as always. As a result, Chushu calmly begins to list his contributions to the caravan's affairs and how he managed to make it profitable. Yet despite everything, the father immediately hands over the reins to Chushang. And now when disaster has struck, they want responsibility from him again. Chushu directly states he will not obey his father's orders unless he is given full ownership and authority over the business. His open disobedience stuns the entire family, especially the second wife and her son, even his father. The father goes mad and almost immediately strips him of power. Is it really so? Helplessness creeps into his mind like an unfortunate accident. Recently, this man was driven into a dead end. Apart from Chushu, none of his sons have the necessary skills or experience to run the caravan's affairs. Exactly so, the third wife tries to accuse Chushu of caring more about business than family. However, Chushu immediately stops her, pointing out that he has nothing to do with the current state of her son, exhausted by the argument. Ultimately, Father Chushu, by one order, finally removes Chuxian from the caravan affairs and from all other family matters. In the struggle for the inheritance, Chuxian is effectively removed from the game. Returning to Chutsu, the patriarch once again gives him full control over affairs and even compensates him with extra money for the trouble. Chutsu simply thanks the elder calmly. Later, already inside the academy, in the accounting department, Chushu comes to collect the money. Seeing the incredible amount, Chushu comes again to collect the money, written on paper, and he finally understands. At first, he thought he was just competing against three idiots and their descendants, but the real enemy all this time was his own father. He never truly intended to acknowledge him. Chushu's plan becomes painfully simple. Kill or maim the remaining brothers and remain the sole heir. The next chapter begins 1 month later. In the second wife's apartment, the woman confesses, Chushu has become a much more formidable rival, even more than Chukai. She sighs regretfully, saying that if she had known everything would turn out this way, she would have built a good relationship with Chushu from the very beginning. Her son agrees without hesitation. Indeed, now Chushu takes all the leading roles in the family. But unfortunately, their father does not like anyone who constantly causes problems. If they want to deal with Chuchu, the second wife is convinced that they will have to think outside the box. At this moment, Chuchu Shan suggests visiting her father, her grandfather. Obviously, over the last decade, his dojo has noticeably expanded. We are transferred to the dojo of Din Kai-shan, which belongs to the father of the second wife. Inside, the man is already dead, and Din Kai-shan himself looks disappointed, just as a strict father should look. It turns out he once wanted his daughter to marry into the Chen family. But because of the man she did not marry, now everyone is talking about it, and even her cultivation has already surpassed Father Chushu. The daughter quickly explains, she came for help, not to return to the past. Now nothing can be done. She says that they need to help his grandson secure the position of head of the family, and Din Kai-shan only snorts contemptuously. After all, her husband is still relatively young, so he will probably die long before her son inherits this position. The daughter flares up with anger when he touches on recent rumors about Chushu and about him making a huge deal with noble merchants from the state of Yan. But despite this, Din Kai-shan calmly notes, the chance still exists. If Chushu does not fulfill the contract requirements, then the reputation he has so painfully built will simply collapse. The daughter, she nodded in agreement before explaining, although she controls the southern mines, she cannot directly do anything that might hit the family business. Her husband would go mad. After that, Din Kai-shan proposed a simple plan. Instead of hiding the ores, they just need to be sold. The logic sounds reasonable, but objections arise. The daughter immediately objected. The ores are incredibly expensive. They could fetch tens of thousands of silver. She does not know a single person who could afford to buy such an amount at once. Hearing this, the old man advised selling everything to the Li family. But as soon as he said that her husband would not be angry if there was profit, she immediately objected, because the Chu and Li families are mortal enemies. Disappointed, Din Kai-shan pointed out that it is precisely his daughter's hesitation that prevents her from moving forward. Yet he still asked how much ore this mine produces monthly. Surprisingly, she admitted she had no idea. However, if she had to guess, it would most likely be about 50,000 kadi. So Din Kai-shan orders her to start making calculations immediately, while secretly thinking that his daughter knows nothing about business. In his eyes, this is a perfect chance to grab huge profits and also help her. The next day, the polished ores are delivered directly to his dojo. Din Kai-shan goes outside and asks how many were delivered. The worker politely explains that in total, 57,000 kadi. The man instantly freezes in shock as Din Kai-shan, as if casually, orders him to change the numbers. The worker stammers and refuses, and then Din Kai-shan coldly asks if he should remind this man who he is, showing that it is not a request, the poor guy can only afford food. Humbly apologizes. Meanwhile, Din Kai-shan internally decides that it is time to go to the Li family. The next scene takes us to the residence of the Li family. Inside the main hall, the third junior master, Li Zhao, sits together with Din Kai-shan. The old man praises how well the Li family's business has been doing since their father passed away, so Li Zhao politely thanks him for the compliment. However, the cunning old fox quickly shifts the conversation to Chushu. Li Zhao immediately goes mad, especially after recalling how Chuhu humiliated his subordinate Li Jing and even killed one of his men in the town of Yuanbao. Din Kai-shan barely smiles and finally names the real reason for his visit before starting to tell everything related to the Chu family. After a long explanatory part, the old man ends the conversation with the question about whether Li Xiao is interested in buying ores. Of course, Li Xiao agrees immediately and even offers a price slightly higher than the market value. This effectively closes the deal. Kai-shan asks the young man to act quickly and send the ores as soon as possible, while he secretly turns over in his mind the thought of the huge sum he just earned. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, as soon as he leaves, Li Zhao's elder brother Li Chung and his second brother Li Yun rush into the hall. Both immediately say that Kai-shan is an old fox. He acts only when it benefits himself, so Li Zhao could easily suffer losses from partnering with him. Seeing the two elder brothers, Li Xiao briefly and to the point recounts everything he agreed upon with Kai-shan. Having listened to everything until the end, elder brother Li Cheng immediately states that this is a terrible idea. In his opinion, the reason why neither the Shen family nor the Chu family have moved against the Li family so far is simple. Both families are mired in their own internal problems. Li Zhao disdainfully replies that Kai-shan is doing this only so that his grandson gets the position of head of the clan. If they succeed, then eventually the Chu family could become their ally. Hearing this, Li Chung warns him, resolve the issue quietly without attracting attention. But Li Xiao just grumbles that the elder brother is too cautious, because as soon as someone says, nothing will go wrong, everything immediately starts to go awry. The next day, Chu Shu is training in the midst of work when suddenly one of the caravan workers sharply interrupts him and thrusts an urgent message. As soon as Chu Shu manages to scold the man for barging in randomly without warning, he quickly explains that someone from the family secretly sold the last batch of ore, and most importantly, the ore intended for the noble merchants was immediately resold to the father of the second wife. Chu Shu hears that Li Zhao himself is personally overseeing the transportation of the ores, and only a barely noticeable smile touches his lips. Sensing that this is the best moment to remove someone from the path, Chu Shu calmly orders Ma Guo to gather people, saying they are heading straight there, Kai-shan's dojo. Meanwhile, Li Xiao has no idea about the disaster already approaching him. Suddenly, Chu Shu appears and in a cold voice asks the person if Li Xiao really understands what he just did. Li Xiao calmly denies it, saying he just bought ore from Kai-shan, and asks what Chu has to do with it. To this, Chu Shu counters, does that man really intend to ignite a conflict between their families over an ordinary batch of ore? Li Zhao instantly bursts into rage. He declares that their families have been mortal enemies for years. And moreover, Chu humiliated and beat his men in the town of Yuanbao, which Chu has almost forgotten. So Chu involuntarily wonders if Li Zhao really wants to make such a big fuss over a few disobedient servants. Understanding that Li Zhao is not going to back down, Chu immediately, without wasting a second, he throws himself into the attack. Li Zhao barely manages to block the sudden strike, but the recoil throws him back and completely shocks him at how much Chu Shu has become stronger. Not giving him a single breath, Chu Shu again rushed forward swiftly. After several exchanges the show gradually takes over the top, and that the moment Li Xiao loses the sword, he immediately understands that it is the end. Of course, Chu Shu does not hesitate to go for the fatal strike. It all would have ended there if Kai-shan had not intervened in time. Relying on his golden purified hands technique, the old man intercepts our protagonist's attack and coldly asks if he really dares to kill someone before his dojo. The protagonist takes a step back. He sees that the old man has gone all out to protect his grandson. Inside, he already knows he cannot defeat Kai-shan now because he is a bit stronger than him. He exists. Even so, our protagonist leaves behind a threat, stating that a foreigner should have no place to interfere in the affairs of the Chu family. Since Kai-shan insists on his interference, it will not end well for him. Seeing our protagonist walk away, Li Zhao quickly expresses gratitude, sincerely thanking Kai-shan for the rescue, but he cannot help mentioning how strange and unusual our protagonist's sword techniques have become. The old man agrees, believing such techniques undoubtedly do not belong to the righteous. Returning home, our hero's subordinate couldn't resist asking why he hadn't finished the fight, since the old man, in his opinion, should already be feeble at such an age. The hero only shook his head and replied, at this moment, Kai-shan is stronger than him. And what is there to say? The dojo was overcrowded. Fighting there would immediately put him at a severe disadvantage. Yet our hero promises that in time he will deal with the old man. But for now, he must return to the Chu family estate and find out what the stepmother and younger brother are up to. They dared to bite the hand that feeds them. The scene switches to the main hall of the Chu family. Main hall. Inside, our hero reports the entire situation and asks why his family sold OR to the Li family, the very clan they had been trying to suppress for years. Hearing this, the main wife and her son secretly smile to themselves. They are pleased that our hero and the second wife are already beginning to clash. Without any prefaces, The father of our protagonist immediately demands, "Who conspired in this betrayal?" The third wife replies that she knows nothing about it and says only one thing: the paddle was sold to the father of the second wife. This makes the protagonist's father begin to doubt how it happened that the paddle ultimately ended up in the hands of the Lee family. Without any hesitation, the second wife explains that her father initially intended to use the paddle to make weapons himself. But since the Lee family refused to cooperate, he had no choice but to sell the paddle to them instead. She does not even try to hide that he made a colossal profit by selling 50,000 kedises of ore at a price higher than the market one. In addition, that the second wife resembles the father of our protagonist. Her own father made a significant contribution to the rise of the Chu family. Without the support of Ding Kai-shan, the Chu family would never have been able to establish themselves in Tongzhou Prefecture. Of course, from this, the protagonist's father noticeably calms down. She is truly right. Moreover, due to the amount of profit, it turns out that the family technically did not suffer any losses. And yet the man warns her, "Do not dare think that he is a fool." He clearly makes it known that he knows how she cooperated with the secular family and decisively states that next time this will not happen. And now the true patriarch declares the matter closed and sends the entire clan away. Our protagonist, of course, is insanely angry. Meanwhile, his stepmother and younger brother secretly mock, hinting that the patriarch just pretended as if nothing happened, almost as if our protagonist is not part of the family at all. To their misfortune, this only gives our protagonist the green light for what he had long planned. As soon as he goes outside and reunites with his subordinates, he immediately declares, the meeting did not go according to plan. In any case, now he intends to kill Li Jiao with his own hands. Ma Kuo remains completely stunned. This is because our protagonist decided once and for all to prove who is truly worthy of the heir position. Ma Kuo suggests seeking help from boss Han Bao. However, our protagonist only shakes his head, saying that Li Jiao has already given him a better idea of how exactly to proceed with his plan. But before he can explain more, the scene sharply cuts to another place inside the inn courtyard. Li Ding sits alone, drinking and thinking about how his third gentleman Chu Shu completely ruined our protagonist's plans. But in the very next second, the man almost jumps out of his skin in fear when Ma Kuo suddenly appears behind him and calmly informs him that his young master wishes to speak with him personally. The poor servant has no choice. He must follow Ma Kuo. Soon, He Jing is stunned to realize young master Ma Kuo is actually himself, our protagonist, indifferently ignoring the servant's pain. Panic. Our protagonist calmly orders him to sit down. Meanwhile, thoughts race through Li Jin's mind. Is the protagonist planning to kill him? Instead, the protagonist decides to use his greed to his own advantage. He is confident that Li Jin will never accept being an ordinary servant forever. So he places cultivation materials and valuable resources before him. Greed in Li Jin's eyes becomes obvious as he stares at the treasures and wonders if they are really meant for him. Our main hero confirms, under one condition, he can take everything. Li Jin must reveal the routes his young master takes. The servant immediately twitches nervously and asks what exactly our main hero plans to do. Our main hero's face grows cold as he explains, "This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. The only question is whether Li Jin dares." Of course, Li Jin wastes no time and immediately accepts the deal. He greedily grabs all the resources and quickly leaves. Ma Guo enters through the door, still not believing that his young master so easily predicted how the servant would betray the Li family's secrets. Our main hero explains that Li Jin is naturally greedy and power-obsessed, so a man like him will never be satisfied with the role of a servant for life. Ma Guo can only agree. Again and again, he realizes how unpredictable the human heart is. Next scene. It takes us to the Li family's mansion. Inside, the Li brothers discuss our protagonist. The second brother says he heard their youngest lost to him. Li Jiao reluctantly agrees, admitting that our protagonist is incredibly terrifying. Although he is still in the lowest cultivation realm, his power is ridiculously overwhelming. Moreover, Li Jiao even suspects that our protagonist did not fight seriously during their previous encounter. Because of this, the elder brother suggests Li Jiao take their uncle as protection, saying the main character is already in the blood condensation realm. But the youngest brother doubts, are such precautions really necessary, especially considering that the Shangmang Mountains now operate under strict rules? And yet, the elder brother insists that is exactly why Li Jiao must take the uncle along. In dangerous times, it is always better to be safe than sorry. And so, the next day, the group sets out on the road. Li Jiao stays close to the uncle. Li Zheng assures him that nothing will happen. Li Jiao sincerely thanks him for accompanying him. But to their complete surprise, our hero suddenly appears right in front of them, calmly stating that Li Jiao has something that belongs to him. Li Jiao is confused by his sudden appearance, but as soon as he notices that only a small group came with him, his confidence returns. He speaks arrogantly, brazenly. He points out that the father of our hero has already settled this matter, yet our hero still causes trouble. He even asks if our hero really intends to drag the Chu family into the conflict because of this. In response, our protagonist releases a terrifying wave of murderous intent, one that leaves no doubt. Today he will kill Li Jiao. He no longer cares about his own father's opinion. As a result, Li Xiao also swiftly draws his blade and orders his men to attack. Meanwhile, the Li family escorts simultaneously move against our protagonist. At that very moment, Ma Kuo wildly bursts forward with his men and loudly declares that the time has finally come to show the young master what they are capable of. Meanwhile, our protagonist heads straight for Li Xiao. However, just a moment before he can... As soon as he approached, Li Zheng stepped forward and blocked the way. The expert from the blood condensation realm calmly told our hero that now he would be his opponent. Our hero was pushed back, and Uncle Li Jiao ordered him to retreat, saying that if he obeyed, this encounter would not count for the man as if it never happened. The hero was surprised. He did not expect that such a level of power was even possible, only in the realm of blood thickening. To the misfortune of both, our hero was not going to retreat. Instead, he ordered Ma Kuo to attack the young master and personally took on the uncle. Of course, Ma Kuo immediately rushed to carry out the order. Vo eagerly accepts the opportunity to meet with the young master, leaving the older man under our protection. During the clash, Li Zheng warned our hero the difference between someone only in the realm of blood thickening and someone already in the realm of bone hardening is colossal. After our protagonist is pushed back, he suddenly bursts forward and releases the combat equipment. Our protagonist tries with all his might to defend himself, but he is still thrown back. Finally, he is knocked down and flies backward. Quickly recovering, he freezes in shock and watches the man intently, because only by this movement can he determine that he is a monk. More precisely, a monk from Northern Great Bright Palace. So it is quite natural that our protagonist wonders, how did a person from such a powerful sect end up serving the Li household at all? In the house, the man explains, once he was nothing more than a kitchen servant, but the Li family gave him a chance for a better life. Because of this, he advises our protagonist to retreat, as he will not be able to defeat them. However, those words only fueled even greater anger in our protagonist, and so the two are drawn into a fight again. From that moment, their clash continues, without pauses, without hesitation. As soon as the first retaliation begins, the monk immediately understands. Our protagonist's style is not just unconventional, it is also dangerous. On the other hand, Ma Guo has already defeated the younger master. Without wasting a second, she reaches for the boy's hand. While his master struggles, stuck in the clash, the monk sends our hero flying again. Not giving him a chance to recover, the monk lunges forward once more. But our hero manages to dodge at the last moment, and a giant crater opens on the ground. Immediately after this, our hero goes on the counterattack and directs a strike straight at the monk, aiming for his fingers. Clenching the staff with his fingers, he involuntarily drops his weapon before he can properly prepare to fight with bare fists. Instead of a weapon fight, he has to switch to bare hands, and a mist catches up with him just as he prepares. Our protagonist takes the incoming blow himself, and at that very second, uses the chance to immediately go on the attack. In the end, the sword slices his neck, briefly with no chance. Only then does our protagonist finally exhale with relief, as if a stone has fallen from his shoulders. In his thoughts, he never imagined he would have to fight a monk from one of the two major Buddhist sects. And fortunately, he only managed to win because the monk abandoned his defensive style and went fully on the attack. Seeing this, Ma Kuo approaches, holding Li Jiao in his arms. He notes how impressive it is that our protagonist managed to defeat a monk in the blood condensation realm. Curious, the protagonist asks if Ma Kuo has ever met monks before, especially from the sect of the Great Radiance. Ma Kuo explains, in fact, there are two sects of Buddhist monks, one in the north, one in the south. He personally has not encountered them, but was previously in close contact because the Iron Hoof Cavalry base is located near the northern Buddhist sect. Meanwhile, Li Jiao completely loses his former pride and begins to beg for mercy. Unfortunately, for him, it is already too late to regret. Just like that, our protagonist takes his life, sending him to the afterlife so that he may reunite with his dead father. After this, our protagonist returns to Ma Kuo and suggests taking ore and goods from the Lee family caravan before moving on. Nakuo asks what to do with the bodies. Our protagonist calmly says to leave them behind. He wants them to be found. The next scene takes us to the estate of the Lee family. Predictably, soon the two Lee brothers find the bodies of both their youngest brother and their uncle. The second brother immediately demands to know who could have done this, so the older brother tells everything that happened. Predictably, the second brother goes mad and is ready to personally hunt down our protagonist for revenge. But the elder brother immediately stops him. He angrily points out that revenge makes no sense now. He immediately dismisses the idea of revenge. Now it is a futile stunt. The Lee family is already in a vulnerable position, and their uncle is already dead. So the main thing is that their enemies do not take advantage of the situation. A reasonable explanation. Only after hearing it does the second brother ask what they should do next. The elder brother replies, first they must wait and observe how the Chu clan reacts. He is sure that the patriarch Chu will not remain silent after our protagonist openly defied his orders. And if necessary, they will simply hire outside experts to eliminate him. Later, this becomes only a forecast that comes true. The father of our protagonist is madly furious and immediately demands to call him. The man cannot believe that our protagonist dared to disobey. As soon as our protagonist steps over the threshold of the family hall, the father throws off all ceremonies and directly asks, does he remember the instructions he was given earlier? Respectfully. Our protagonist explains that he truly took his father's advice into account. However, opportunities like a merchant deal happen only once in a lifetime. So he managed to secure both the ore and the goods of the Lei family at the same time. Hearing this, the elders began to look at him more closely. The protagonist plans to transfer the Lee family's property to the clan, so the elders finally realize that he is truly capable of handling such situations. Unfortunately, his foolish older brother suddenly interrupts and points out that our protagonist did not consider whether his actions would bring trouble to the entire Chu clan. After all, the Chu clan is far from the strongest in Tunjo Fufani. In response, the protagonist calmly asks if he would prefer that he compensate the Lee family for the murder of their third youngest master. The brother was already halfway to answering when the father suddenly barked, "Be quiet!" The protagonist's father summed up, "The matter is already finished, but in the future, at least inform the family before taking such big steps." The protagonist, of course, gladly agreed. But even then, the father could not help but feel curious about how the protagonist managed to kill Li Zhong despite such a noticeable difference in realms. Our protagonist modestly explained that he was just lucky. Since that man was older, during the fight, he already left a vulnerability, and the protagonist just took advantage of it. The father stands up and is already about to dismiss the meeting, but our protagonist suddenly stops him. He says this might be the perfect chance for the Chu family to strike and completely destroy the weakened Li family. As soon as they heard his advice and detailed plan, several elders began to turn around to solemnly greet. However, Chu Zhongguan notes that destroying an entire family is not so simple, so he insists that no one take any action without his permission. At this, the meeting finally ends. When everyone else leaves, Chu Zhongguan explains his reasoning to the elders, as his research has reached a critical stage and he cannot allow anything unexpected to interfere. Otherwise, if he really wanted to destroy the Li family, he would have done it long ago. Meanwhile, outside, our protagonist receives a report from one of his subordinates. He enthusiastically announces that they have successfully returned 52,000 caddies of ore from the Li family caravan. Hearing this number, the protagonist immediately stops him and asks to repeat it once more. When the subordinate confirmed once again that they had indeed obtained exactly 52,000 containers of ore from the Li family caravan, our protagonist barely squinted with a wicked smile and made it clear that everything had fallen into place. An evil smile. At that moment, he realized that this was the work of Dean Kaishan. Since his stepmother would not be able to hide the truth forever, he now wondered how she was going to explain this matter to his father. Realizing how beneficial this was, the protagonist immediately demanded that everything be properly formalized and recorded in documents. Of course, the servants became worried, wondering if these actions might backfire in the future. The protagonist did not respond to their doubts. He only ordered the papers to be finished quickly, because right after that, he planned to go into secluded training. And so, after 12 days of secluded cultivation, the protagonist finally comes outside. Finally, he appears and successfully breaks through to the realm of blood condensation. As always, Makuo is completely stunned by the progress of his young master and cannot help but praise his terrifying cultivation speed. However, our hero casually downplays it as nothing special and immediately asks what happened while he was in seclusion. After Chuxiang listened to Makuo's explanation, our hero barely smiles. He knows well the issue is not that the Li family does not want revenge. The problem is different. Right now, they simply cannot afford to cause trouble, and yet he is sure they will not remain silent for long. Meanwhile, the next scene takes us to the Li family residence. Inside, the second brother is furious. More than a week has passed, and they still have not avenged either the younger brother or the uncle. To this, the elder brother calmly remarks, they should rather be grateful that our hero has not yet decided to attack. First, them. During the conversation, another young man suddenly appears. It turns out the Li family is not limited to 3 brothers. Their 4th brother, Li Zhou, steps forward. Realizing the position the family is in, he declares that he wants to create a family. But the expression of the second brother immediately darkens, and the elder brother politely orders him to focus on his own cultivation. He assures the Li family is not falling apart. Having settled this, Li's can only apologize before quietly leaving. However, the real reason for his removal soon becomes clear. Li's is actually an illegitimate child. Because of this, he is definitely not allowed to be involved in the family's important matters. After this, the second brother smugly mocks him, pointing out that one of their brothers has already died. But Li Jie truly believes he can replace them. Yet the elder brother warns him not to speak so harshly, since Li Jie remains their brother under any circumstances. He coldly replies that he will never recognize the concubine's son as part of the direct family line. Realizing that the argument will lead nowhere, the elder brother changes the subject and insists they must deal with the situation after our protagonist killed both of their brothers, uncle and the third brother. Of course, the second brother's position has not changed. He still wants revenge. That is why the elder brother points out that the Chu clan is currently torn apart by internal strife. Moreover, our protagonist lives separately from the main family estate, considering the power of the Li clan, removing it will actually not be difficult. Hearing this, the second brother aloud wonders why this idea had not occurred to him before. When the plan was finally decided, the elder brother orders him to meet with the daughter of Ding Kaishan to secure a path to assassinate our protagonist, and he himself decides to personally visit the Shen family. Confused, the second brother asks why involve the Shen family at all. The elder brother explains that their family no longer has the strength to protect themselves. Because of this, he intends to negotiate with the Shen family, even if it means giving half of the Li clan's assets in exchange for protection. Hearing this, the second brother goes mad. He never thought their family would be brought to such a miserable state, but the elder brother bluntly cuts in. Complaints will change nothing, and orders him to stop wasting time in vain. Despite the fact that they did not know it, Li just secretly overheard their entire conversation exchange. It was at that moment that he finally realized, if the brothers refuse to treat him as family, then he has no reason to blame them for what he plans to do next. Meanwhile, our protagonist calmly enjoys the meal together with his subordinates. Suddenly, their dinner is interrupted by Li Zi himself. The young man immediately exposes that the Li family is plotting to kill our protagonist. Naturally, Li Zi quickly introduces himself before unfolding the entire assassination plan that his 2 brothers have already prepared. Both the protagonist and his subordinates freeze in shock. They can hardly believe that the boy is voluntarily betraying his own brothers. Our protagonist and his subordinates freeze in shock and cannot believe that the boy is voluntarily betraying his own brothers. In response, Li Sei calmly explains that his brothers never considered him part of the family at all. It is quite natural for him to seek his own path. His proposal is simple. Our protagonist needs to eliminate 2 of his brothers. In return, as soon as he becomes the new head of the Li family, he will give 50% of the family's assets. Immediately, our protagonist realizes Li wants to use him as a tool to destroy his brothers. Of course, our protagonist is not very impressed by this proposal. However, Li firmly states that everything he does is for his own survival. Ultimately, our protagonist agrees, acknowledging that he values straightforward people like him. So Li Zi accepts the glass offered to him by our protagonist. When he stands up to leave, he confidently says, one day our protagonist will look back on this moment and never regret the choice he made today. Watching him leave, our protagonist cannot help but realize, for Li Lyle to voluntarily give up half of the Li assets He must hate his brothers to the bone. After this, our protagonist gives orders to his subordinates to begin their own preparations. Meanwhile, the action shifts to the Shen family estate, where the eldest Lee brother is staying. The Lee brother wastes no time on unnecessary ceremonies. He immediately gets to the point and offers half of the Lee family's assets in exchange for protection. When the head of the Shen family notes that empty promises are worthless, the eldest brother decisively formalizes the deal on paper because there is no other way out. Soon, he manages to secure the protection of the Shen family. Even the leader assures him that no matter how mad Patriarch Chu gets, he will never dare to openly oppose the Shen family. Hearing such reassurance, the elder brother confidently states that our protagonist will definitely die tonight. Our protagonist approaches one of his subordinates, who complains. The arrows they have now are much worse than those stored in their main cache. The protagonist calmly explains, not everyone in the province knows how to use such equipment, so they just need to get used to what they have. Of course, as if on cue, the protagonist suddenly orders his men to prepare because their guests have finally arrived outside. The residents were already on site. The Lee brothers were waiting nearby with their men. The protagonist calmly stepped forward, looking them over. All were fully armed. Slightly smug, he joked whether they really came to kill him, and his reaction instantly enraged the second brother. The second brother grew even more furious, raised his sword, and accused the protagonist of killing their third brother and uncle. However, our protagonist calmly corrected him. From the very beginning, his goal was not just to seize their cargo. He intended to wipe the entire Lee family off the face of the earth. Then the eldest brother suddenly asked if the protagonist had noticed anything suspicious. Despite all the commotion, no family member had been found yet. Representatives of the Chushu family came to his aid. Of course, our protagonist already knew this. He already knew that this whole story was closely connected to his stepmother. So in response, he only gave a condescending smirk. It was not a surprise to him at all. Instead, he had no idea what such idiots like them could have done and how it could even concern him. His confidence immediately confused the brothers. However, the elder brother suddenly sensed something wrong about it. He instantly turned around and repelled several attacks, swooping with his sword toward the blows. Unfortunately for him, one of the attacks still hit its target. And as soon as this happened, both brothers immediately understood who had launched the attack. It was their own fourth brother, Li Jie. Now he was furious. The elder brother tore off his mask and angrily demanded why a worthless, illegitimate child like Li's dared to harm the direct line of the Li family. In response, Li Jie laughed coldly and pointed out that he had never been treated as a true member of the Li family. Then he revealed the hidden weapon he had used, which turned out to be the same weapon our protagonist had previously obtained in the Lo family caravan. Worse still, the spikes were coated with poison. Shockingly, it turned out to be the very hidden weapon that our protagonist had previously obtained in the Lo family caravan. And worse, the spikes were coated with a deadly poison, strong enough to kill someone in the realm of innate. Unaware of this, the elder brother fiercely swore to fulfill their father's last wish and cripple Li's with his own hands. However, Li's only snorted defiantly and calmly told him he was already dead. The brothers immediately froze in stupor. Hearing this, especially after Li's fully explained how the poison worked. Meanwhile, our main hero was just standing behind them with a defiant smile on his face. Even he did not expect that the fourth brother of the Li family would turn out to be even more ruthless than himself. Sinning immediately tried to suppress the poison's effect by using his internal energy. Unfortunately, the next second he started coughing and spat out a whole mouthful of blood, watching as the scene unfolded. As our treacherous hero slowly begins to applaud, indicating that this is exactly what a real family war looks like. The second brother in. At that very moment, he turns to Li Jie and tries to kill him right on the spot. However, his own men immediately step forward to protect the fourth brother. At that very moment, Chushu gives the order to kill. Those who were lying in wait instantly release their arrows. Suddenly, members of the Life family begin to fall one by one. Relatives begin to fall one by one. Of course, Makuo does not hesitate or step aside. He immediately bursts into the fight. Meanwhile, our protagonist calmly approaches the second brother who remains. Filled with rage, this man reveals the sword techniques of the Li family. However, to his complete shock, the protagonist reveals the power of one who has already broken into the realm of blood condensation. The second brother is completely stunned. Even if the protagonist had just entered this realm, he could not have become so powerful so quickly. It seems this must be related to the innate technique that our protagonist relentlessly hones. Eventually, the second brother finds himself completely trapped from all sides and finally realizes this could really be the end for him. In despair, the fool suddenly thinks about escape. Unfortunately, as soon as he tries to break away, he is instantly killed. The dead. Seeing that both brothers are dead, the rest of the Lee family members completely lose heart and immediately scatter in all directions. Meanwhile, our protagonist slowly approaches the last surviving brother, Lee Jae. The young man nervously begins to talk about future cooperation, praising the protagonist for such a wise decision. Hearing this, the protagonist remains indifferent. In his thoughts, he coldly despises those who betray their own family, for they cannot be trusted. Of course, the poor boy is unable to understand why the protagonist intends to kill him too. In response, the protagonist calmly explains, Lee Ji's ambitions are too great. Then he orders to remember one thing in the next life. Only true strength can guarantee that a person will get what they desire. At the same time, the soldiers supporting Lee Jae are quickly eliminated by Makuo. As always, Makuo asks our protagonist what to do with the bodies. Our protagonist casually says, leave them. However, Makuo remains shocked after overhearing who his master's next target is. The protagonist also plans to kill Ding Kaishan. When Makuo points out that Ding Kaishan is still formally his relative, the protagonist coldly replies, anyone who conspires to kill him is no longer family. And so, they arrive at the dojo Din Kaishan. As soon as Gatekeeper opens the gate and grumbles about the nighttime commotion, he immediately becomes the first failure on our protagonist's path. From this moment, he is the first victim that the protagonist manages to quickly put in place. They burst decisively into the dojo. King Kaishan quickly goes outside, absolutely furious. The old man roars fiercely, trying to assert his senior authority over the protagonist. But our protagonist calmly emphasizes the very same elder wanted to kill him. Of course, he came here himself to escort him into the afterlife. As soon as our protagonist launches an attack, Ding Kaishan intercepts and blocks the strike with his signature move, with your technique. Calculating that the protagonist is still weak, the old man boldly snorts, you won too easily. The only reason Chu was able to defeat Li Zhong is that he was already exhausted and suffering from internal injuries. Unfortunately for him, reality proves the opposite. In the next moment, our protagonist forcibly snatches the sword right from Ding Kaishan's grip. Before the old man can recover, he helplessly watches as his hand is cut in half. But the protagonist does not even think about stopping. Not giving the man a single moment to resist, he immediately delivers the next blow, and on the spot kills Ding Kaishan. Shockingly, the old man doesn't even live to 30 seconds. After the fight, Chushu calmly orders his men to bring 4 coffins. Naturally, Maguo could not help but wonder what his master planned next. In response, he wisely said, I'm going home to sleep. And the next morning, the scene shifts to the Chushu family residence. In the main hall of the family, everyone froze in confusion. Why would our hero call a family meeting so early in the morning? He calmly entered the hall, and behind him were 4 coffins. On his face was a barely noticeable smile, and he announced, I brought gifts for the whole family. In the next chapter, our hero's father demands an explanation for why the bodies of the Lee family elite ended up in his residence. Hearing this, the son openly admits it was his doing. Chu Chongguan immediately asks if his son no longer takes his words seriously. But our protagonist calmly explains the Lee family was the one who started the attack. Don't worry, insists Chu Chongguan, stating that he will personally handle this matter and demand explanations from the Lee family. He gestures to the servants to open the coffins. General astonishment, and then the protagonist reveals, in the coffins lie the brothers from the Life family. He also adds that he has already dealt with the Lai family's affairs. In other words, our protagonist has successfully destroyed the Lai clan, so only 2 great families remain in Tongzhou. And to everyone's surprise, he takes a step forward. Instead of consolidating power by force, the protagonist takes the initiative and transfers a significant part of the Eli family business to his father and the elders. Of course, the elders are delighted. Now that these assets are securely in hand, the Chu family can finally stand on equal footing with the Shen family. For the first time, the father is truly impressed by how his son has resolved everything. However, outwardly, he does not show it. He only pauses and asks what is hidden inside the 4th funeral casket. As soon as it opens, the second wife involuntarily freezes, seeing the bloodied body of her father. She immediately bursts into tears and, trembling, cannot take her eyes off his corpse. She screams hysterically, demanding to know, did our protagonist go mad when he killed her father? His old man instantly flares up with anger and demands explanations. Our protagonist calmly explains that Din Kaishan conspired with the Li family. He asks if such actions do not make him a traitor. So hasn't he deserved death? His stepmother immediately rushes to side with Zhongguan, pointing a finger. Even if his father really did such things once, his former marriage for the family still cannot be dismissed. Because of this, our protagonist wonders why no one in the family knew that the Eli family had long come for him, and then reveals that Ding Kaishun also systematically embezzled family funds. Of course, his stepmother accuses him of lying, firmly believing that her father could never be capable of such a thing. Prepared for this, our protagonist suggests calling the Chu family accountants, because records never lie. Trying to restrain his anger, Chu Zhongguan immediately orders that they be summoned. In a moment, the head of the main accounting department confirms that everything said by our protagonist is true. This finally blows the wind out of his stepmother's head. She cannot believe that her father lied to her all this time. If the man really only needed money, she would never have rejected that. Hearing this, Chu Zhongguan coldly orders that the woman be escorted back to her residence. When his foolish son tries to pretend he knew nothing, our protagonist's father immediately stops him, asks if he really thinks he is an idiot who does not see through all his tricks, and then orders him to be taken away as well. As for the protagonist, he receives only a light punishment. Lately, this young scoundrel has been on a streak of disobedience. Later, when they are again in our protagonist's home, Gao Xiaobei finally returns after a long absence. He notes that his master has become incredibly wealthy thanks to the still preserved assets of the Li family. Gaobei explains that the profits are so crazy because the Li family had been declining long before their own collapse. In fact, he considers it a real miracle that they managed to hold on for so long. When our protagonist appoints Gaobei responsible for the Li family's business, the young servant secretly slips several bottles of pills he found in the Li family estate. The protagonist immediately understands. He has hit the very golden vein. These cultivation pills are so valuable that you cannot simply pay money for them. You cannot buy them. Satisfied, he gives Gaobei permission to leave. In his room, our protagonist reflects. The transition from the realm of blood clotting to the innate realm is not a simple matter at all. The original Chushu had only mediocre talent. Our protagonist begins to wonder how he eventually became strong enough to rise to the status of Demon Lord and become the greatest villain in the game. Half a month ago, our protagonist was training alone in the yard. Suddenly, Mokuo appeared. Mokuo enters, clapping his hands, and says that his master has finally come out of seclusion and that his cultivation has noticeably grown. Our protagonist replies that Mokuo is not bad at all either, as he has already stepped into the realm of blood condensation. So Mokuo gratefully explains that everything happened thanks to his master's instructions, before reporting something unusual he noticed while our protagonist was in solitude. After the report, the main character was completely confused. According to Ma Kuo, 3 mysterious masters settled in the family's inn and behaved very strangely. The main character became even more thoughtful when Ma Kuo explained that he could not feel any level of their improvement at all, so he suspected these people stand above the innate realm. Ma Kuo was even stunned with shock when the main character casually suggested that the experts might have been in the realm of Qi control. And then he added, the realm of Qi control itself has 5 stages, from the inner astral to the realm of heavenly connection. But the main character insisted, why did Ma Kuo decide that those 3 were acting strangely? Ma Kuo replied that they were looking for a person named Zhang, a powerful martial master from another state. The described Ma Kuo cultivation technique sounded eerily familiar because it was connected to the vast oceanic thinking skill of the Chu clan. The main character was immediately shocked. As in the game, this was the very moment when the original Chushu first encountered a great stroke of luck. In other words, these 3 cultivators are directly connected to the future transformation of his family. So our heroes quite naturally decide to take action. Meet with the masters of martial arts themselves. Later, already within the city, after they had waited for some time, Mokuo suddenly notices 3 men. Just one look is enough for our protagonist to understand this trio is far from anything mundane. So when Mokuo asks if his mentor wants to meet with them, our protagonist shakes his head, implying that now is not the time yet. Instead, he orders Mokuo and the others to watch these men closely, maintaining the utmost caution. At that very moment, the man standing in the middle sharply turns his face toward our protagonist. Our protagonist instantly flinches. He definitely did not expect that one to notice him so quickly. Without wasting time, one of the men suddenly asks his brother why he is looking up, and he explains that it seemed to him someone had directed a gaze at him. Inside the inn, our protagonist immediately assesses the chasm in strength between himself and them, and decides to act cautiously because otherwise he might end up dead. The next scene shifts to the Shen family home, inside Shenrao. He is absolutely furious. He cannot believe that the Li family lost to our protagonist, especially after promising to give half of their wealth to the Shen family. His embarrassed state almost caused him to burn his tongue while drinking tea. At that moment, he bursts into anger and scolds the servant, who keeps apologizing endlessly and offers to prepare enough tea. Shenrong waves him off, noting that no fine tea can fix his failure. Then the servant adds that the people of our protagonist kill mercilessly and are extremely cruel because they are bandits. Shenrong is surprised and stunned upon hearing this. It turns out the servant himself was previously a bandit. His former leader was the same man whom Manhwa killed at the time when our protagonist was supposed to be killed. After listening to the long story, Shenrong immediately puts everything together. He understands that is why the protagonist was able to negotiate with the bandits at all, and also because of the incident with his youngest brother. Using this as leverage, Shenrong decides to personally go to the Chu estate to meet with our protagonist. Later, at the protagonist's residence, while he is training one of his subordinates, he reports that a guest from the Shen clan is waiting for him. The protagonist, embarrassed, demands to know who Shenrong is, and the subordinate replies he is the head steward of the Shen clan. Moreover, he raised the Shen brothers, who are now respected and powerful figures. Our protagonist immediately senses that the man is not ordinary, so he naturally wonders why he came. Unfortunately, even the subordinate has no idea. Next, the action moves to a private room. The protagonist immediately gets to the point and asks why Shenrong came to him. Shenrong does not answer immediately. Instead, he extends the signed agreement. After he reads its content, our protagonist understands. This is an agreement between him and Li's older brother. Shenrong does not deny and directly demands 2/3 of the Li family's business instead of half of his compensation. Of course, our protagonist responds by asking on what grounds he has the right to make such a demand. And yet, having waited for that question, Shenrong smugly reveals the secret conspiratorial connection of our protagonist with the bandits and the events that followed. So our protagonist warns, speak carefully and stop throwing accusations without any evidence. At that moment, Shenrong points to a servant, who with a happy smile recounts the entire incident involving his former bandit leader. Of course, this immediately makes our protagonist realize that the servant was once one of Lian's people, and the people of Lausanne. At that moment, he truly feels like a failure. After all, he let one of them slip away. Despite everything, our protagonist remains completely unmoved. Shenrong also notices his calm behavior and thinks to himself, this guy is really quite interesting. But still, he orders our protagonist to meet his demands. Everyone already knows what will happen if the rumors get out. In response, our protagonist explains that fulfilling such demands will be difficult because he has already given half of the business from the Li family to the Shen family. Shenrong does not worry for a moment, as he has leverage over our protagonist and believes that the boy has no room for negotiation. So he is sure there is no one to negotiate with here. At that very moment, Shenrong is stunned. Our protagonist suddenly strikes him. In anger, he demands to know if our protagonist would really dare to kill him. Our main hero simply pushes him aside. After that, he returns to the foolish servant. The former bandit is killed on the spot. Hearing the commotion, our main hero's subordinate rushes inside and immediately freezes in shock upon seeing what is happening there. Galbei inwardly notes, Shenrong is not a simple figure within the Shen clan. What his master just did almost directly calls trouble for the Chu family. The protagonist explains the situation to Galbei, and he is even more shocked, though he still remarks, his master killed someone from the Shen clan. Despite Galbei's panic, the protagonist remains extremely calm. He emphasizes that Shenrong personally gave him the perfect excuse to kill him. Galbei freezes without words, thinking that his master really knows how to handle matters, but is even more talented at creating problems. Next, the camera takes us to the main hall of the Chu family, our protagonist's elder. He was already used to his annoying behavior and had no idea who or what his son had offended this time. As soon as our protagonist calmly stated that he had killed the Shen family, everything happened and immediately. The house steward of the family, Chu Zhongguan, involuntarily crushes his teacup in shock. As if in conspiracy, the entire family and elders were identical expressions, from shock to disbelief. In a frenzy, Chu Zhongguan demands to know what exactly gave his ruthless son the courage for such an act. Defending his actions, our protagonist presents a signed agreement from Shenrong, explaining the conversation they had and how Shenrong conspired with the Li family. After this agreement, the father immediately fell silent, and seeing this, some of the elders also nodded in agreement. They agreed Shenrong brought trouble upon himself because there is no sane reason to demand compensation when our protagonist has already wiped the Li family off the face of the earth. And yet Chu Zhongguan emphasized, even if our protagonist had grounds to kill Shenrong, his actions bring problems for the entire Chu family. Our protagonist already expected fear from the old man, but did not think he was such a coward on this scale. He tells his old man not to panic, because the Chu family is not some petty force. The Shen family is feared only because the Kanglin sword sect stands behind them. During this, his old man explains that the Kanglin sword sect is the first sect in Wei County and holds first place among the 7 sects and 8 factions. Our hero admits he already knows all this, but he is not one to act without a plan. Chushu stood before the enraged head of the family, who was shouting about inevitable doom due to his recklessness, and coldly cut in, their new patron would be the imperial court of Northern Yan. The father was stunned. The young man clearly explained his plan. If they swore allegiance to the empire first, it would make them a showpiece example and guaranteed protection even from the powerful Sanglin sword sect. Chushu mentally acknowledged that this step would provoke the wrath of other factions, but he absolutely did not care about the future fate of the family. For a moment, a suffocating silence hung in the hall. Chu Zongguan again burst into a shout and ordered to throw his son into the ancestral hall, to be held under guard until the Shen family decided his fate. The young man sneered contemptuously at the fact that his own father turned out to be such a pathetic coward, ready to endure extortion. 2 burly guards approached from behind. "I will go myself," he said coldly, admitting his only mistake. He had underestimated his father's pathological timidity. As soon as Chushu turned away, a predatory smile spread across his face. The 3 younger brothers had woven intrigue so diligently that they themselves guaranteed him the place of heir. The head of the family ordered the servant to immediately go to Shanae, to humble himself and find out what they would demand to hush up the matter, and the servant obediently nodded. The sun peacefully illuminated the roofs of the estate. Tishu was interrupted by a servant. He burst into the head's room and reported that Chushu had just killed the old butler Jun. Chu Zongguan's face twisted with rage, and he shouted wildly. The servant reported to the blind head of the Shen family that Chu's family envoys were waiting outside and asking for peace. He disdainfully ordered them to be let in. As soon as Chu's envoy tried to justify himself, Shenmo interrupted him with an unequivocal verdict: to maim Chushu and destroy his combat skills forever. The old man turned pale and muttered that for a warrior this was worse than death. Shenmo's face contorted with fury. He barked that the Chu family had no right to refuse. Otherwise, the return of his elder brother would be their true end. The envoy bowed resignedly and went to report to his lord. Shadows slowly lengthened on the roofs of the Chu estate. The family head slammed his fist on the table, raging at the audacity of the enemies. The old advisor cautiously suggested seeking protection from the imperial court. The one-eyed patriarch sharply refused. His secret research was at a critical stage, so he ordered preparations for the evening banquet. He promised to personally maim Chushu in front of Shenmo. The advisor tried to remind him of the young man's great talent, but the head coldly dismissed thoughts of the future. The sky above the ancestral temple flared with a bloody sunset. The frightened servant flew to Chushu with terrible news. His father betrayed him and agreed to hand him over for execution already this evening. The young man clenched his teeth in anger at his own family. The servant begged in panic to immediately gather the people, but Chushu kept a cool mind. He understood that reinforcements were too far away and there was simply no time. He decisively moved to the table with the parchment. A heavy brush struck the white paper with force, leaving a thick black mark. Chushu handed a note to his subordinate with an order to deliver it to Mage, withdraw the troops to Qingyuan, and never return again. Pouring wine, he mentally acknowledged that the plans had changed. He would not become the heir, as the Chu family would soon be completely destroyed. For an hour, the head of the Chu family hospitably welcomed the head of Shen at his estate under the cover of night. In the hall, Chu apologized for his son killing Shunjun and promised to cripple the boy right before the guest's eyes. The latter coldly agreed. The father sharply waved his hand and barked to immediately bring the son. Chushu calmly entered the hall under guard escort. Shen squinted in surprise. The guy was not afraid at all of the inevitable punishment and loss of combat skills, and Chushu remained unmoved, mentally noting that the time had already come. Suddenly, the conversation was interrupted by a rumble, and Chief Chu turned around in confusion. A frightened servant flew into the hall, shouting that their gates were under attack. Chu fiercely sprang to his feet, demanding the names of these audacious ones. Outside, a bearded warrior stood over the hacked corpses of the guards and jeeringly shouted at Chu Zongguan, Rejoicing that he had finally tracked down this scoundrel, Shen, Chushu, and the rest of those present gloomily stared at the uninvited guests. The leader of the attackers roared that he had been searching for him throughout Eastern Qi for over 20 years while he hid in the Imperial Guard under a false name. Learning about the affiliation with the elite Imperial Dragon Cavalry, the young man behind could not hide his shock. Even the weakest there had innate power, so disguising himself as a simple head of a minor clan Chu clearly concealed a serious secret. The leader stood at the threshold of the open gates and promised to reveal the true nature of this man. In the memory, young Chu Zongguan had just arrived at their 5-man squad, humbly asking the elders to take care of the newcomer. The memory took him to a suicidal mission. Their squad was to steal a treasure for the second prince, serving as decoys to divert attention. They received the real artifact, but while the fighters fought to the death with the pursuers, the treacherous Chu Zongguan simply fled with the chest. The price of betrayal turned out to be terrible. The elder brother was whipped to death, and the rest were maimed, forever destroying their cultivation. In the young man's mind, everything instantly formed into a single picture. Here is the true reason for Chu's hiding and the root of the tragedy from the original plot. The leader sharply drew his blade. Today, Chu Zongguan will die. The leader of the guards pointed the blade at Chu Zongguan, accusing him of betrayal and the death of their elder brother. The bearded man smiled sinisterly and asked if Chu guessed who exactly leaked his coordinates to the enemies. Chu hoarsely asked again, who exactly did it? From the crowd stepped out his own son, and the father nearly went mad with rage. Realizing that this treachery would destroy the entire clan, Chu burst out shouting, but the boy coldly retorted, the father himself crippled his combat development, so now he deserves death. The leader laughed loudly at such karma, while the family head, cornered, pitifully begged for mercy and offered to share the treasure. Cornered in a dead end, the head of the clan pitifully begged to be spared, promising to immediately return the captured treasure. The guard sharply swung his saber to wash away the shame from his squad with the blood of the traitor. The traitorous son fearfully waved his hands, assuring that he was not with them and would just leave. Borden snarled fiercely. All from the Chu clan were to perish. The young man hastily promised to help find the treasure, so the leader ordered to temporarily spare him, but to slaughter the rest of the family to the last. Nearby, another heir froze in panic, not understanding how everything turned to ruin in an instant. With a whistle, the enemies rushed into attack. The first sweeping strike cut through the air. The blades flashed instantly. The weapons clashed with such force that the air trembled from the flash. The warrior in gold gritted his teeth. His blade was not holding up. The bearded opponent pressed with his whole body, forcing him to retreat. For a brief moment, the fighters froze facing each other, measuring strength before the next clash. The young man in blue carefully assessed the fighters from behind the column. Their power far exceeded anyone he had known so far. The men crossed swords again. Borden grinned triumphantly. Cornered, the warrior in gold quickly swallowed a red pill and suddenly spat a stream of blood right into the enemy's eyes. He screamed wildly, clutching his face. The deadly blood of the 5 poison sect instantly melted the skin. The poisoner only smiled maliciously, rolling the green antidote on his tongue. With one sharp movement, he cut the blinded opponent. The body fell heavily to the floor. The boy with the stick cried out in despair and rushed to the fallen comrade. The staff whistled down onto the enemy in gold. The ally desperately shouted to Shen's head to immediately play the trump card before it was too late. Shen snarled fiercely and gripped the hilt tighter. The swordsman in green struck with such force that he raised a giant wave of destructive energy. Shen barely managed to jump back. At that very moment, the attacker's body was split in half by an invisible counterstrike. The enemy in gold froze. Where did real astral energy come from here? The warrior in blue exhaled with relief, examining his torn sleeve. He was saved by his brother's artifact. Shen clenched the remnants of this astral dagger in his hands, feverishly calculating how many more times it would work. Cursing, the boy in blue suddenly sprang up and fled. The leader in gold turned pale with horror. If the Dragon Imperial Guard finds out everything, it's the end for him. The leader in gold roared furiously in pursuit, ordering the fugitive to stop. A hail of heavy clubs flew at the fugitive's back, forcing him to defend himself while running. The pursuer's face twisted with blind rage. Shen suddenly lunged forward, raising his sword for a strike. With a fierce roar, he unleashed a destructive wave of energy that surged at the enemy. The blade sliced through the air with a whistle. The shockwave threw the opponent backward, forcefully smashing him into the old man. The old man lowered his gaze to the bloody hand that pierced his chest through and croaked, "Why?" Shen stopped over the bodies and coldly said that this treasure was needed by him, no less than by the second prince of Eastern Sea. The youth in blue smiled coldly. With such a treasure, He would no longer have to look up to his elder brother Shenbai. Now he himself would bow before him. Suddenly he shuddered and turned around in shock. The youth in blue released at him the feathers of 1,000 generations, a deadly hidden weapon of the Sect of 1,000 mechanisms. A hail of sharp blades inexorably approached the target. "Farewell, head of the Shen family," the boy said with an icy smile. The man in red defended himself from the barrage of magical blades, feverishly guessing where the enemy got the powerful plumage of 1,000 leaves. He cursed as he blocked another strike. A dazzling discharge of energy struck him right in the face. The youth in blue rushed into attack with a shining blade, roaring, asking if he was ready to die. The man was stunned. The boy did not even think to dodge the incoming strike. A predatory smile, and the youth used the technique Azure Dragon in the sleeve. Enemy fingers pierced through his shoulder, blood splattered, but he ignored the pain, driving his blade straight into the target. Falling on his back, the defeated enemy only managed to croak that the thirst for the supreme artifact had destroyed him too. Later, the youth was already standing over another body, ordering his companions to gather trophies, because staying in the Wei district was extremely dangerous. He quickly searched the dead man and pulled a small notebook from his bosom. Wasting no time, the boy rushed away, obsessed with the next goal, to find that very supreme artifact. Once in the room, he feverishly yanked open a drawer. He carefully felt around the hiding place among the stacks of paper. The next cabinet door opened with a sharp jerk. The purple gold and banknotes were already in his pocket, but the main question remained, where had Chu Zongguan hidden the supreme artifact? He swiftly flew outside. Found it! His fingers satisfactorily squeezed the shining stone right above the body of the slain enemy. Glancing over the courtyard strewn with corpses, he discarded the idea of setting a fire. The smoke would quickly attract unwanted attention. The artifact was securely hidden under his coat. He pulled the blade from the hands of the dead guard to somehow imitate signs of a fight. Then he began carefully arranging the bodies, placing the weapons in the hands of the slain. Finally, the scene took the desired appearance, as if two guards had slaughtered each other in a nighttime skirmish. There was no time for perfect decorations, so he rushed away, hoping to at least somewhat confuse Shenbei, the only one who now posed a real threat. One powerful leap over the mansion wall, and his silhouette dissolved in the light of the full moon. The next day, endless forests of the northern Shanmen Mountain spread out before him. After overcoming the winding path, he froze before the dark maw of the mountain cave. In the semi-darkness of the cave, he sat on the ground and took out the mysterious box to finally examine the acquired artifact. With a quiet click, the lock gave way, and on the red cushion gleamed a thick golden silkworm moth. The young man held his breath. It was the divine parasite of the moon worship sect, the only creature in the world capable of completely reforging a person's foundation. The previous owner had naively tried for years to subdue it with his chai, although such a caliber required completely different methods. Without hesitation, he bared his chest and pressed the sharp blade directly to the skin. With a hoarse groan, the young man drove the parasite deep into the open wound on his own heart. He screamed desperately as the dazzling golden light flashed in his chest and began rapidly pulling the torn flesh together. Fed by blood, the silkworm moth launched its main process, transforming the weak body into the perfect vessel of an unparalleled genius. The parasite formed a strong symbiosis with him, rather than simply granting instant ascension to the heavens, as the previous owner had vainly dreamed. The fusion instantly threw the young man to the peak of the blood condensation realm, after which he contentedly took up the trophy manuals. On the pages was a powerful paired saber technique, far more valuable than all the pitiful skills possessed by the family's elder son. But the open metal puzzle box caused only silent surprise in him. Finding no logical use for it, he indifferently tossed the useless item aside. Chushu quietly chuckled when he saw the glow above the small metal box. He carefully weighed the mysterious find in his hand. Inside lay a tiny sword. The young man immediately realized he had come across a genuine antique, a rare spatial box from the Sumeru array. Knowing that Shenbai would definitely seek revenge for his dead brother, Chushu decided to lie low to calmly heal his wounds and break through to the innate level. He immersed himself in solitary training, healing wounds and slowly accumulating strength. Exactly 7 days later, the eldest son of the Shen family solemnly arrived on horseback at the mansion. Shenbai measured the servants with a deadly gaze and coldly asked why they were still breathing if his younger brother was dead. The guards fell to their knees in horror, justifying that the master himself had gone to the Chu family, to which Shenbai sharply ordered to immediately take him to the body. The frightened subordinate forced a nervous smile and quickly agreed. In the hall with the open coffin, the chief investigator Chen was already waiting for the elder brother. For the next 15 minutes, he silently and meticulously examined the cut on the dead man's neck. Suddenly, the investigator stood up and grimly declared that the death was staged, and the crime scene was a masterful forgery. When Shenbai fiercely shouted the killer's name, Chen unhesitatingly replied, "Chushu." The high-ranking official stood over the corpses and grimly demanded explanations from the chief hunter Chen. Chen reported, the entire Chu family was slaughtered by 3 killers with military training. The patriarch managed to poison the strongest enemy, but died from an unexpected blow to the back from his own brother. The official doubted the version of mutual destruction, and the hunter nodded. The crime scene was carefully fabricated. The dead brother's fingers were torn from using a secret sword technique, but none of the corpses around had such wounds. Someone else took the blow and staged the massacre, but the official did not believe that the weakling Chushu, whose corpse lay right before them, could have done it. Chen pointed to the mutilated body, a face smashed beyond recognition, lack of cultivation, and spear calluses revealed a cheap forgery. The real Chushu is alive and simply faked his own death. The enraged official ordered the fugitive to be immediately declared wanted throughout the Wei province. Posters promising a huge reward for his head instantly appeared on the walls. Armed patrols combed the streets, vainly trying to track him down. 3 months later, Chushu calmly walked through a foreign city. He had successfully broken through to the innate level and deadly honed his combat techniques. Far from the lands of Wei, he stopped in a new city, waiting for the appearance of ancient ruins. Soaking in a hot bath, he relaxed. All old ties were severed, so no one would find him here. A sudden noise interrupted the peaceful walk through the city. A drama was unfolding ahead. A young man was offering a girl a box with identical black pearls, but she categorically refused. A talkative passerby nearby eagerly explained, these were not local courtship traditions at all, but a simple one-sided harassment. It turned out that this impudent man was Zhang Baichen, a famous womanizer who simply would not leave the city's top beauty Lin Xinyu alone. While the neighbor ranted about Zhang's outstanding older brother, the hero only yawned mentally from this boredom. Xinyu's patience snapped. She shouted across the street that she already had a lover. Her eyes feverishly scanned the crowd. Without hesitation, she pointed directly at our hero, deciding to use the unfamiliar swordsman as a shield. The interlocutor pushed him sideways in surprise, as if to say, why pretend to be a stranger when having such a secret romance? The girl came up close, and he responded as dryly as possible. Do we know each other? Xinyu leaned close to his ear and whispered a passionate request to play along, promising to remember this favor forever. Xinyu pressed against the stranger in black and sharply rejected Zhang, calling the young man her lover. The boy suddenly grabbed her wrist, and with a swing, slapped the girl hard. The crowd froze. Xinyu fell to the ground, shockingly holding her burning cheek. Passers-by started murmuring, amazed at such ruthlessness. Zhang immediately jumped to the girl and fiercely jabbed a finger at the offender, shouting that he was courting death. The spectators decided that the boy had completely lost his mind. By Zhang's order to take revenge, his burly mercenary moved forward. The big guy struggled to squeeze his boot into the cobblestone and confidently suggested to the boy to surrender peacefully. His fist whistled as it flew into the young man's face. The attacker used his signature grip and clung tightly to the enemy's hand. The young man, with a lightning jerk, twisted the stranger's hand until it cracked and powerfully counterattacked, making the thug scream in pain. The big guy's trademark grip clashed with the young man's bare hands in a short, fierce struggle. The stranger in black took only a step, and the attacker was already flying onto the cobblestone with a pitiful scream. The crowd gasped, seeing the big guy helplessly writhing in the dust. Master of the inner sphere, the witness of the fight, gasped in cold sweat. Panic instantly engulfed the street. Frightened passers-by scattered in all directions. The man in green warned the young man to immediately flee from the wrath of the local tyrants from the Zhang family. But the warrior calmly replied that his business here was just beginning. The beaten hooligan fell to his knees and began to plead pitifully for mercy. The young man disdainfully said he was not going to kill anyone and ordered to be taken straight to the Zhang estate. The servant turned pale, realizing that this stranger was not joking at all. A predatory smile played on his face. It was time for a serious conversation with their patriarch. The beaten street thug trembled with horror, refusing to lead the tall swordsman to the Zhang estate, as the head of this family was an extraordinarily powerful master. One cold question from the stranger instantly knocked the last remnants of courage out of him. He had to submit and show the way. Meanwhile, in the luxurious inner courtyard of the clan, the frightened young man ran to his father, whining that he had just barely escaped being killed. Zhang Sunlin harshly cut off his son's panic, not understanding who dared to raise a hand against their blood and where the elite guard had gone. The young man tearfully blurted out that the attacker turned out to be a natural-born master who crippled their fighter with a single move. Sunlin frowned grimly, struck by the audacity of the unknown foreigner. At that very moment, the swordsman himself appeared at the estate's threshold, pushing the beaten guide ahead of him and mockingly assessing the family's wealth. The young man hysterically pointed a finger at him, and the enraged Sunlin stepped forward, preparing to punish the insolent intruder on their territory. However, the guest calmly brushed off the incident with the beating and declared that he had brought them business worth hundreds of thousands of silver coins. Sunlin's anger instantly evaporated. He squinted with interest and ordered him to speak. The son clung to his father's sleeve in shock, unable to believe that he was ready to listen to his offender. Ignoring this, the swordsman explained, at the upcoming secret auction, he needed an influential local representative to buy one lot, for which he would pay generously. As a deposit, he carelessly threw Sunlin a bar of rare purple gold, making the clan head understand before him was not just a traveler, but a man with an incredibly powerful backing. "I am Lin Yi," the young man said calmly, named his inn, and promised to come later. He moved toward the gate, and Head Zhang watched him with his gaze. The suspicion that the boy was a stranger was confirmed. The beaten son immediately whimpered about revenge, but the father sharply rebuked him and ordered the guard to report the truth. The servant Hanwei bowed his head submissively. Hearing the name Lin Xinyu, Zhang almost exploded with rage. He had already forbidden his son several times from approaching this manipulator, but he was not going to forgive contempt for the family. The servant was ordered to pay informants of the Fangman Pavilion generously and to dig up everything about Lin Ye. 5 days passed. In the magnificent pagoda of the Tao family, an elite auction of secret boxes began. The steward showed the first lot, an ancient find that promised rare elixirs. The hall instantly exploded with bids. Zhang suggested competing for the lot, but Lin Ye indifferently shook his head. He was not going to play blindly, as he only knew for sure from the plot about a few real treasures of this evening. Later, a sinister crimson box of the demonic cult was brought onto the stage. Lin Ye's eyes flashed. While the crowd feared the dark aura of the artifact, the young man ordered Zhang to immediately win this auction. The man with a beard sharply raised a placard, shouting a bid of 250,000. The ball giant instantly outbid the price, but Zhang immediately responded by raising it to 300,000. The auction turned into a fierce duel, where the bids quickly soared to 360,000. The bald man shouted angrily, 400,000, and lunged at his opponent, demanding an explanation for why he was crossing his gang. Zhang calmly replied that he was looking for demonic technology for his son, to which the leader brazenly demanded 100,000 silver for his exit from the game. Zhang glanced at Lin Ye, and he responded with silent consent. The leader smugly crossed his arms, as the head of the family respectfully accepted his condition. Lin Ye mentally summed up, the box cost as much as 500,000, almost completely draining the Chu family's silver reserves. Zhang reminded the auction rules, and the young man promised to visit him at night to collect the purchase and pay the remaining gold. Declaring that the main treasure had already been obtained, Lin Ye calmly left the hall. 2 hours passed. At the estate, a subordinate reported to Zhang the results of a secret investigation. The name Lin Ye does not exist, and the guest himself looks exactly like the wanted fugitive Chu Shu. Intelligence gave only an 80% probability due to a discrepancy in strength. The wanted man was significantly weaker than their client. Zhang's eyes gleamed predatory, and he grinned sinisterly. For him, such confidence was more than enough. The servant tensed. Could the head really betray Lin Ye to the Sanglon sword sect? But he only squinted slyly because the most valuable thing was different. No powerful force stood behind the boy. A greedy smile spread across the head's face. After the death of the Chu family, the fugitive carries all their wealth with him, and simply taking it is far more profitable than selling information. The servant cautiously reminded that the boy was unlikely to surrender without a fight, so the master ordered his men to surround the estate and, in case of resistance, to call other major city factions for backup. The accomplice nodded and hurried to prepare an ambush. Night fell. Chu Shu came to the deal and calmly placed the box on the table, expecting an honest exchange with head Zhang. However, Zhang grabbed the goods, grinned predatory, and directly called the guest by his real name, the young master Chu Shu, who is wanted. Patriarch Zhang, together with his men, surrounded Chu Shu, cynically offering to spare his life in exchange for all the family assets. He reminded that the young man was the only survivor in his family line, but Chu Shu only mockingly asked if the enemy would burst from greed. Zhang drew a sword and cut in, saying that to him the boy was just a stray dog hunted by the mighty Changlin sect. Chu Shu grinned fiercely, mockingly returning to the patriarch his own words that life is more valuable than money. A lightning-fast lunge forward. Zhang's face tensed sharply with realization. If the killer is not stopped now, his family will bleed. One word suddenly rang out in the air. Hainan. Zhang unleashed the powerful chaotic wind technique, unleashing a storm of emerald blades on the boy. Chu Shu harshly met the strike, slicing the air with a wave of blue energy from his blade. Sparks flew from the direct clash of metal. Zhang, with a muffled groan, recoiled backward, losing balance on the carpet. At that very second, a mercenary with bloody blades jumped on Chu Shu from behind. Isekai'd. The young man barehanded and without even looking tightly squeezed the attacker's wrist. With a powerful whirlwind of force, he threw the minion away, coldly cutting off that he had just wasted his only chance to survive. A sudden blow knocked the spirit out of the opponent, causing him to choke on his own scream. Chu Shu stood impassively in the middle of the hall, while the enemy's body heavily fell onto the carpet. The next moment, he gripped the back of the young man in blue with a death grip. The patriarch shouted in despair, begging not to touch his son. A harsh push made the boy wail pitifully. Patriarch Zhang was covered in cold sweat, mentally cursing the moment he decided to provoke this monster. The old man desperately offered a secret box and money in exchange for his son, but Chu Shu coldly cut off. He hates thieves and there is no way back anymore. The deadly blade pressed against the frightened hostage's throat. Immediately after that, Chu Shu sharply threw the captive to the ground. The patriarch, maddened with rage, rushed into attack, releasing a whole hail of green magical blades. The young man did not even flinch, easily deflecting the deadly barrage. A lightning-fast interception of the strike, a devastating counterattack knocked the old man off his feet, tearing the space with a bright flash of energy. The remnants of the guards fell one by one, spitting blood onto the broken floor. The young man crouched over the fallen enemy and pulled a small red box from under his clothes, ignoring the dying man's last words. Suddenly, footsteps were heard, and he sharply turned toward the noise. An armed squad burst into the hall, and their leader fiercely roared, not believing that someone dared to start a massacre on their territory. The man grimly introduced himself as Dao Zongguan, nicknamed Blade That Cuts Mountains, and began demanding the stranger's name. The young man calmly replied that it was only his personal revenge against the Zhang family. But Zongguan cut him off. No one would allow him to kill locals and just leave. A predatory smile flashed across the young man's face. In an instant, he soared into the air and unleashed a devastating strike on the leader with a wide arc of blue energy. Zongguan barely managed to raise his sword to block with a battle cry. A dazzling wave with terrible force crashed into the steel. From the colossal pressure, the leader fell to his knees, and the floor around them cracked from the discharges of power. A ringing crunch, and the famed sword of Zongguan shattered into tiny fragments. The young man cold-bloodedly began to hide the weapon in its sheath and threw it over his shoulder, wondering if such payment was enough. Terrified to death, Zongguan turned pale, broke out in a cold sweat, and pitifully extended his hand, begging for mercy. The young man did not even look at him and calmly moved towards the exit past the guard paralyzed by fear. He calmly descended the wide stairs, tightly clutching the acquired red box in his hands. The lid flipped open, and a dazzling glow flooded his satisfied face. Despite all efforts, the coveted item was finally in his hands. In his hands was the secret technique of the ancient demonic sect, capable of turning the thirst for murder into boundless power. The next target, Mount Luoyan, where ancient ruins were about to appear. Meanwhile, the courtyard of the Zhang clan estate was covered with white funeral paper. Zhang Baitao confidently stepped onto his native threshold, calling for his father and brother. A smile suddenly disappeared from his face. A servant rushed to him with terrible news. The head of the family and the younger brother were dead. The entire clan was slaughtered by a young man named Chu Shu, a monster who with one strike even knocked back their best master. Chu Shu! Bao Tao hissed, boiling with rage. The leader swung his sword and shattered the stone brazier to pieces. He grabbed the frightened servant by the collar and forced out the direction. The killer was heading straight to Mount Luoyan. His fingers clenched the hilt until it cracked. Bao Tao understood that he could not defeat such a powerful enemy alone, but he was not going to hide. A plan flashed in his mind to turn to the young master Ni Dongliu, a famous fighter against evil. The servant feared that such an outstanding warrior would not even look at them. But Bao Tao firmly decided to use the authority of his sect. Heavy black clouds were already gathering over the majestic roof of the estate of gathered justice. Ni Dongliu slowly approached the guest, recalling their old meeting in the Bay Mountain sect. Zhang Bao Tao abruptly stood up, and clasped his hands pleadingly. He asked for help, promising loyal service in return. The master of the estate smiled kindly, gestured for the young man to sit, and assured him he would not abandon him in trouble. Having gained hope, Beitao began to talk about his father's problems. He listened carefully and promised to help. But due to internal estate matters, he asked to wait until tomorrow. That same night, the servant placed on his table a secret intelligence report about the true state of affairs in the Zhang family. Dunliu ran his eyes over the lines and sneered contemptuously. Old Zhang died because of his own greed, trying to steal someone else's treasure. The servant cautiously inquired whether this meant a refusal for Bai Tao. He did not turn away. He sharply cut off that their estate was not going to clean up the dirt for every fool. Instead, the next day the cunning Dunliu arranged a lunch and seated Bai Tao at the same table with new people. Before the young man sat 3 experienced warriors: Master of Double Spears Zhang Yu, Swordsman Li Qingfen, and head of the local escort, Liu Yunhai. The trio of experienced fighters silently measured the young supplicant with their gaze, weighing whether the matter was worth their time. The master feigned concern about the busyness of his men and suggested that this trio of mercenaries take on the task. Baitao instantly seized this chance and offered the warriors a generous reward from his personal resources as a disciple of the sect. The head of the agency grinned smugly. He agreed to help the young Zhang track Chushu. His gaze flashed with cunning. This was the perfect chance to get rid of the annoying mercenaries of Liu Yunhai with other people's hands. The town of Luyang was bustling with visitors. In the local tavern, a black-haired youth calmly drank tea. He knew that the mountain anomaly had lured a bunch of fortune seekers here. Suddenly, 2 armed warriors silently appeared behind him. The youth froze with the cup near his lips, catching the movement of 2 more at the threshold. 4 masters, and their thirst for killing was physically palpable. The choice was one: strike first. He forcefully threw the table at the attackers, drawing his sword on the move. The enemy furiously smashed the obstacle with an iron club, but the youth was already in the air. His blade flashed with the technique piercing the sun and moon. One of the mercenaries gritted his teeth, barely holding back the shining strike. The force of the collision simply knocked him off his feet. Without a single pause, the swordsman released a deadly arc of energy at the other opponent. He only managed to turn pale with horror before the strike tore through the air right in front of his face. Both surviving comrades froze in shock, not even managing to realize how their comrade died in a flash. The red-haired one with the spear turned pale with horror. Li Qingfen had just died before his eyes, and the promised reward suddenly turned into a deadly trap. His partner only frowned gloomily, finally seeing with his own eyes the same terrible power of Chushu that had destroyed his father. With a cry of revenge, he rushed forward, unleashing a shining purple blade on the enemy. Chushu sneered mockingly and promised to quickly send the son to the other world following the dead father. A dazzling flash from the reflected strike. The Avenger was thrown back with a crash, breaking through wooden walls. Spitting blood, he shouted madly at the redhead, demanding an immediate attack for the sake of their young master. He broke out in a cold sweat, fully understanding that they simply could not become oath-breakers in the eyes of Nia Dongliu. No longer hesitating, they struck Chushu together from both sides. The fight began without any warnings. The young man in black found himself trapped. 3 killers pressed him from all sides, and one of them was already sparking with violet energy. The sword whistled as it flew out of the sheath. The enemy in blue snarled fiercely, sensing his long-awaited chance. The blades clashed with a dull roar, scattering lightning discharges in all directions. At that moment, another mercenary rushed from the side, cutting with the technique of the snake blade. The young man swiftly intercepted the weapon, stopping the strike millimeters from himself. A flash of metal. From above, a red-haired giant with a spear was already jumping at him, roaring fiercely and ordering him to die. The hero took a powerful blow on the blade, sparking a shower of sparks. Throwing the enemy aside, he gathered energy in the sword and unleashed the technique of the unified chi, which pierces the rainbow. A blue glow enveloped the blade, and he struck again. The big guy blocked the strike with the handle, but the terrible force of the swing made him spit blood. With all his might, he struck the shining sword directly into the floor. The blast wave shattered the wall into pieces, leaving 3 pursuers standing confused in the dust. One of them shouted in shock that the victim had escaped. The bearded man shouted to chase after, and all 3 took off from the spot. The red-haired spear-bearer was the first to slip through the breach. Suddenly, the fugitive sharply glanced over his shoulder. Instead of running away, he rushed straight towards the enemy. His hand was enveloped by a blue whirlwind of energy. The technique, capture of the abandoned pawn, activated. A lightning-fast palm strike hit the spear-bearer right in the head. The stunned enemy was thrown back just as a swordsman ran into the yard, completely unaware of what was happening. Without letting him recover, the hero released a powerful wave of the blue dragon from his sword. The swordsman desperately thrust out his blade, trying to block the strike. In vain, the radiant attack shattered his steel to pieces. The blue blade pierced the defense and deeply cut the enemy's chest. Two fingers of the youth in blue flashed with violet lightning, and he lunged forward. His target, a bearded man in blue, screamed wildly and fled. The youth called the enemy a coward and swung for a devastating blow. A foreign hand harshly grabbed his wrist. Lightning shattered against an energy barrier, and the attacker howled in pain. Before him stood a warrior in dark. "Go to your father and brother, no need to thank me." A dazzling burst of energy pierced through the youth's chest. He collapsed breathlessly onto the cobblestones. The crowd froze. People whispered in shock, realizing that this ruthless stranger had just ended the life of the elite disciple of the Bashan sword sect. The man with the silver spear whispered tensely that killing a member of a great faction so easily was utterly unheard of. A sharp whistle tore through the silence. The rescued bearded man from a minute ago was carving his way to escape, driving the crowd away in two waves with his sword. The deadly blade was rushing straight at the girl, frozen with horror. "Scoundrel!" The warrior with a spear instantly jumped forward, harshly deflecting the vile strike. Shards of ice splashed in all directions, and the shocked man barely squeezed out a single word. A moment, and Chushu appeared behind him, pressing a shining blade to his throat with the order to depart to the other world. Caught off guard, the enemy only stared confusedly at the stranger who had appeared right behind his shoulders. The body fell heavily into the dust, and the rescued warrior with the trident calmly thanked for the intervention. Chushu acknowledged his strength and directly asked why those three so fiercely wanted to kill him. The warrior calmly replied that before this he had slaughtered the attacker's entire family over old debts, so their thirst for revenge was entirely expected. Throwing a pouch of silver to the frightened innkeeper for the broken yard, he mentally noted the perfect ruthlessness of his savior. The warrior suggested drinking wine as a sign of gratitude and introduced himself as Lu Fenxian, and the young man gladly agreed, introducing himself as Chushu. Inside, Chushu triumphed. He finally came across a key character of the original plot, the mighty heir of the demonic god, and now firmly decided to make him his ally.